All right, we are live. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 10 new topics that we voted on. Let's see. Okay, so the first one, I was hoping Travis would be here to talk about this because the first one is unanimous no's so far, aside from
Hmm.
Travis himself. And then I'm
What was your
undecided. But
first?
the first one is, should we fund a team to patrol wildlife and put dying animals out of their misery? Now this is a simplified version of a project that I think Travis thinks is very important, which I see a lot of where he's coming from, but he wants it way further, like where he thinks in the real world we should go out and wipe out most wildlife, take out most animals, and basically figure out the smallest amount of animals we can keep existing to not mess with the ecosystem, and then wipe out any other possible animal. And so I wanted to make
The
something a little
ecosystem already
more.
does that.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, I thought I said the ecosystem does that on its own already. I
Mm.
thought I was muted. I muttered to myself to make sure I can remember things to say.
No,
You
you're
go ahead.
fine. So I see some value because I heard this story about like this elephant that was sinking into quicksand. A mom couldn't get it out, and there's this like documentary crew out there, I think, and these birds landed on this baby elephant, and they were like pecking it, like eating it alive. And one of the guys said, "Let's shoot it and put it out of its misery." And the other guys are like, "No, we can't mess with nature." And so I think there are cases. I don't know if we have the funding, like if that's a top priority over like taking care of homelessness and stuff like that for humans. But I think if we had the funding, it would be moral to put an animal that we could have a 90% or higher likelihood this animal's going to suffer and die in a short amount of time, putting it out of its misery. I just don't know if it's worth the money. Vape, what do you got?
So, even if we had money, let's say we had money and we decided to take out all turtles for some reason. Let's say their have a habit of just roll over their backs and they're dying with misery. If we had that situation and we decided to do that, how it's gonna play out in long run? That's the real issue because there are predators who eat turtles, and what about them
Mm.
then? So that circle has to be maintained. And even though I want to avoid as much as suffering possible, but I really don't want to mess with nature as much as I can. I mean, it's okay to shoot an elephant who is getting inside a quicksand. That's dying anyways. But
Mm.
imagine that animal is in stuck somewhere, and he might die after 2 days or 3 days. So there's a possibility he will survive somehow. So I'd
Okay.
rather save that animal than kill it.
Gotcha. Okay. Good thing Travis is here. He's the one I wanted to talk to. Um, Travis. So we're going over the 10 new law proposals that we're voting on. And so far, out of 9 people that have voted, um, on the first law, which is your law about, well, it's a rendition of your law about patrolling wildlife and taking animals out of their misery. Um, I voted undecided, you voted yes, and the other 7 people voted no. And I'm thinking that there could be two-part problem. One is that a lot of people don't understand the issue that you and many others find with this situation, and the other one is maybe it's poor wording on my part. If I was going to send this video to the other senators to try to convince them to vote for at least this part, um, what would your reasoning be? And keep in mind, a couple people said that the reason they don't want to is they think that funding should go elsewhere, like to take care of like homelessness and other issues.
Well, the thing about the homelessness thing is kind of strange to me because um there's no reason we couldn't fund both of them. Like it's not an either or um
Mm.
sort of thing. So we could easily fund this and homelessness. So I think that's kind of a strange point. Like that's kind of a strange reason to vote against it. Um
Well, to be fair, we haven't really worked out like what our funding, like what our economy looks like, how our funding works.
Yeah, yeah. So for now, let's imagine we're in the U.S. Like with what the U.S. pays for with military, police, all these different things. Should we allocate some of the funds to this idea of Travis's? Should it do in the U.S. Would the U.S. be able to afford to do it in their own wildlife?
I don't think we could unless we were willing to cut down the military budget by a pretty fat margin. If we could cut the military budget in half, we could probably do something about both situations, but that's a hard sell for America.
Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna read Michael's vote on it because he voted no and then wrote a little detail on here. He said no, but I would fund education for organizations who are in the wild regularly, like he said, park rangers, maintenance staff, guides, etc., to do this. Travis, how do you picture it playing out? Would it be like a hired crew that's kind of like how we have sections, like we have military and we have Navy and we have National Guard? Like, would we have a group of people that are their job is to go do this? Or do you kind of like Michael's idea where people that are already out there would just get training and they would get the approval to do so?
Well, when you wrote it, I conceptualized it as like kind of like a government like program. Like you would have like government employees doing this.
Yeah,
Whose
yeah,
like
and that's kind of how
specific
I
job
meant
would be
it.
to do that.
Does that sound good to you, or do you prefer the idea like Michael's saying about park rangers and such?
Um, I don't know that I have a preference. Either one seems fun to me.
Okay. Um, would
I
you
think
do
that
you?
having park rangers and people like that would be fine because allocating a little more funding to them would be easier than funding a whole new branch to do that because it's just so much time and it puts people in a lot of danger to have them combing the wilderness looking for things that are hurt. Because
Hmm.
predators usually get attracted to things that are hurt like that. And if you're out stalking like a white-tailed deer in Florida that's hurt and you're waiting to kill it, you might just get jumped by a cougar. And if you get jumped by a cougar, you're probably not going to win that fight. Like there's just a lot to it that I just take into account that makes me vote against it.
All right, Travis, what are your thoughts on that? If the goal was to do this good thing, but let's say the outcome was a certain amount of deaths, would there be a certain amount of human deaths that would make you say, no, let's not do this anymore?
Um, well, you'd weigh the suffering of humans against the suffering of animals. Like, if it was causing like overall more suffering, if like doing this caused more suffering to humans than it prevented suffering of animals, then yes, I would oppose it. But it would just be a matter of like which one results in less suffering.
Okay, in a perfect world where you were fully in charge, would would you treat it kind of like a draft where you'd call it so important that we would even kind of force people to do it? Or is it just that if people were willing to and we had the money and we could pay them enough, then we would base it on the suffering levels of humans versus animals?
I don't think I would have a draft. It would just be a like voluntary thing.
Okay, so if people were to volunteer, especially with the pay they'd get from the government, then the amount of deaths wouldn't matter until the suffering became worse for humans than the total suffering for wild animals. But if people looked at the numbers and didn't want to do it, and there wasn't enough pay to get them to do it, then you would just either step up and do it yourself, or you just say, "Oh, okay, well nobody's going to do it, so we're not going to force them."
I mean, I think at that point we would just look to like other options.
Okay. I only ask because, well, for one, I'm curious to what degree you care about the topic, and for two, I think something like a draft is very interesting. Like, I mean, obviously, people don't want war to happen, but I always imagine different scenarios where, like the Revolutionary War, if people weren't forced to fight, then anyways, it's complicated. So in some cases, I can see. There's very few cases where I can see things like force being acceptable, and protecting one's country seems to be one, but I wouldn't think taking care of wildlife would be. That would just be if we can achieve it. Okay, do you happen to have any studies that would show like levels of suffering that happen in the wild that could be prevented by human intervention? Maybe just an article or two that you could send to me that I could share with the rest of the group.
Like, what do you like studies specifically about like this or?
Yeah, something that might lead people to, like, we can look at numbers of how many cows and chickens and pigs are slaughtered in factory farms, and we know the factory farm conditions are bad, so we could say, oh, this many billion happen here for this reason, and that can lead us to view this as a certain concern. Whereas something like the assumption, and I'm not calling it just an assumption, but if it were an assumption that there's all this wildlife suffering that could be prevented, then maybe something that's more I don't know, something to read that would show people, because I don't know, I could go into the wild with a gun and try to find suffering animals to take out, but like, I guess I would want to know like what the likelihood is, what the dangers are, which animals they are, how many a year suffer different ways. Anyways, it could just be interesting to read up a little more on it if you have anything on it, or even just like a YouTube video or something.
Yeah, I can send some stuff about it.
Cool. Okay, so let's go to the next one.
I
Okay,
have some
should.
questions.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I have some questions for Travis, just to inquire how it's going to happen. So when we kill the animal, what are we going to do with the bodies? Are we going to leave them in the wild so other animals can eat them, or are we going to sell them? How are we going to prevent if someone is trying to steal those bodies? Because there are animals which you can use sell skin and horns and etc. etc. And which animals are we talking about? And if okay, the third one is not important.
I also have a question to add to Vapob's after he answers.
Okay.
Sorry.
Vabhab, your kind of your volume's a little soft
Yeah, I
and
was
cutting
about
out.
to say that.
I could
Okay,
repeat
can you-
some of. Oh, there we go.
I
How
can,
is it better now?
Yeah, that's better. But
Yeah.
Travis,
Is it
do
better
you,
now?
do you need him to repeat it, or did you catch it?
Yeah, I didn't hear the
Okay.
full thing.
So I'll repeat it. Okay. So what are we gonna do with the bodies of animals we kill? So are we gonna leave them in the wild so other animals can eat it? How are we gonna stop the process? Because there will be an individual who will try to steal those bodies and sell them in the market, and that can increase increase that market, and eventually people will start killing for no reason. So how are we gonna avoid these things?
Yeah, I mean, we could just, if you're concerned about like that, we could just outlaw the selling of animal bodies.
Uh, but black markets do exist.
Just leaving the carcasses out in the wilderness can also cause a lot of problems for the natural ecosystem. And there's also what I was going to ask was how do we prevent this from just becoming a way for people to just excuse poaching? Like if somebody goes
Exactly.
out and goes, oh, I killed this rhino because it was a bull male that was getting violent and looked sick. How do you prove that? How do you keep it from just being a way for people to poach? Oh, I just wanted this buck's antlers, so I'm just going to say it looked like sickly. Like there's and to
Well,
what
if it's
have
if
said,
it's
if you try to
government,
sell the meat of something that's already sickly or hurt, you might not be able to safely sell that and eat it. There's a bunch of problems with like
yeah, if it's
disposal.
government Yeah, if it's government funded, like if the government has a setup, then you to legally be doing it, like if you were caught on camera doing it, you would have to be approved by the government to do it. So that would I mean, people can go out and poach right now. If they get caught, they're in trouble. But if the government's going and doing a specific thing with the military, I do see issues here. I don't necessarily see that issue. And same thing with the dead animals. I don't care what people do. If an animal's already dead, they could eat it if they want. If it's unhealthy to eat it, then don't eat it. You could leave it out for other wild animals, but if it can cause danger, then just cremate the bodies or throw them over a cliff or something. I don't know if you agree, Travis, but yeah.
It can
Yeah.
increase the demand in black market, but yeah, that's it.
Instead of having it be like a government organization, we could do it the way that we already do hunting, where we put out tags. You get a certain number of tags. You're only allowed to cash in these tags. Once you bring in the animals, they have to be tested, and so that they can see if they had broken legs or if they had like an illness before you shot them, things like that. Because you can do tox reports and like screenings to see what was wrong with them. That way, that funding wouldn't quite be so much of an option or a problem, and people who already hunt for a living would be able to continue doing that for their living. To play a small bit of devil's advocate on my end, or for Travis.
Travis, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we could do that.
My biggest concern with that would be if somebody was saying they did it for that reason and it was kind of like deer. Like, so if deer are overpopulated and somebody goes and shoots a deer and then they go eat it, you could have the same situation where somebody can go out, shoot an animal, break its leg, bring it back, say, oh, I got the tag or whatever because its leg was broken, but you broke it after you shot it.
Injuries are different than pre-mortem. So, like when you get your leg broken when you're alive, there is an immediate hemorrhage. There's damage to the surrounding muscle tissue because it tenses. If you're already dead and your leg gets broken, there's no hemorrhage. The muscle.
Yeah. Well, and we have the ability to do autopsies to find that kind of thing out with humans. I just don't think we'd have the time to test. Like if we're actively looking for people to go take animals out of their misery, then I just don't think we have the time to check do an autopsy to see if their bones healed a certain way. But I do know what you mean, and I think that is a really cool thing we're able to do.
Healing bit. I just mean like if you see an animal with a broken leg, chances are its leg hasn't been broken for very long, because like using deer, if there's a deer in the wild with a broken leg, that deer's not going to make it very long. And if it does, that is a wild, like a rare occurrence, because predators are always looking for the weak ones. It's easier to take down a fully grown deer with a broken leg than one that can fight back.
Gotcha. Okay, well, let's move on to outlawing riding of horses. So I was undecided on this. Two people here were yeses, and Eric was the no. So Eric, how about share your no thought here?
Riding horses has always been a very important thing for people. There are some fields where you can't rely on vehicles and you have to use horses, like in agriculture. There are some places where they do farming where they have to ride horses. There is like training of sheepdogs and things like that. You need a horse to keep up with them. There's all kinds of reasons that you would need to ride horses. Especially if you were going to try to move everything either agrarian, which some people do want to do, or if you just wanted to put a bigger focus on like a vegan society, you would need a lot more farming done. And in order to do all that farming, you would need to be able to train protective animals. You would have to be able to properly maintain like corn and various other cash crop and things like that. So a horse is an easier way to go about that. You don't have to pay for fuel. It doesn't put off all the pollution that vehicles do. You don't need to mine to have a horse, right? There's a lot of downwind impacts that can be fixed by reducing vehicles and using horses in a largely farm-based society.
All right. Whoever wants to respond, go for it.
Okay, so I changed my vote to no after that, and I send you this because I think we should outlaw it eventually. But I'm a capitalist about certain things, so I don't want to shut down any business who works with horse riding overnight. Because what about those humans? So if we are not gonna do it slowly and then it's fine. But otherwise, I think it's okay to hurt animals than you if other than hurting humans. So I changed my
Hmm.
vote to no. We shouldn't outlaw this. And this reason is horses are in bad situation, but they can be good. They can be happy, and human can ride them at the same time.
Okay, I had forgotten that you had switched your animal ones to no, because the overnight thing. So my question for you would be with this one, if the society said 1 year from today it will be illegal to ride horses. So it's not overnight. It gives people time to figure out various different things. But so it would be on September 10th, 2024. Would you be in favor of that, or is that too soon for this law?
I think 6 months is enough. But the thing is, people will be asking that what am I supposed to do now? So if
Mhm.
we are gonna get up and say, okay, we are gonna help you figure out, we are gonna make another way so you can make a living. I think
Hmm.
6 months is enough. Yeah, I would be in
Okay.
favor if you are gonna do it over a year.
What if we were
If
not capable of helping them make a living? Would you still be in favor of it? Let's say for 1 year from now.
They should get constantly reminded that this is the case, and you'll have to surrender your animals to us, and we'll take care of the animals from after that. And yeah, I think 1 year is a enough time to most people to figure out.
Okay, sounds good. And then Travis, what are your thoughts? Do we even have to wait a year?
Um, so when I voted on the measure, I was kind of thinking primarily about like horse riding, like for fun. Um,
Mm.
so that's why I voted to
Okay.
ban it.
Would you say that in a work setting for like cowboys doing what they got to do for wrangling up cows, since we are currently in our society are allowing like regenerative farms and like free range type cows, would you say that would you say anything that's work related where there's money being made put into taxes, that horses are okay, but outside of that, no riding?
Um,
I'd be fine with doing horse races too.
I don't
Mm.
think so. Um, because I don't think we would accept that in like a human context. So I would feel
Yeah.
like the answer should be no.
Okay, cool. Eric, did you have a thought?
I had two. One of them was banning like horse races. I'd be for like the whole horse jockey thing because like the living conditions of a lot of those animals is terrible. But
Mm.
the other one that I had that was a little more pertinent was if the government didn't have enough room to house all these horses, if we couldn't find a way to take care of them until they died, what would happen with them? Especially people who had foals, people who had colts, horses that hadn't broken yet. We don't have enough free range land for these horses. That's why
This
we
is
can't reintegrate bison into the wild because there's not enough grass or grazing land for them and they would eventually die out. So we have to kind of keep them on farms.
this is my
But
favorite question to
if
answer.
people can't use workhorses, if people have not Clydesdales, because people don't really use Clydesdales for that all that often, but if people have big, broad workhorses that require a lot of food and require a lot of care, like sweat scraping and things like that, so the horses don't get sick. There's a lot of upkeep on a horse, and if you just toss them out in the wild, especially after climate change has happened and society has moved forward and cut out a lot of broader land, are we just going to kill the horses so that people don't have them to use, or are we just going to hope that they live in the wild and be fine?
Yeah. So, this is my favorite question to answer, or at least the idea of if the world went vegan in one day, what would we do with all the animals? And I think the quickest, best answer for this is kill them all. You kill them all, quickest, most humane death, is way better than what we're currently doing. Now, I don't think this is the best answer. The best answer is if the government can afford it, you get a giant sanctuary, probably spay and neuter unless you can rewild some of the animals, but you let them without breeding, they just die out on their own, having a great life in a sanctuary. If you can rewild, that's fine too. But no matter what, even if we find issue with the affording of a sanctuary or any of these different things, if we execute every single one of them right now, like in 5 minutes, we just wipe them out, in my mind, it must be better than what we're currently doing.
Have you ever worked on a farm? Just out of
Uh,
curiosity.
Worked and got paid for
Before
it,
you lived with a
or
farm.
was a small child that lived near a sheep farm and spent every day on it? I have not worked on one, no.
So, like, I mean, like, have you been in? I'll reword it so it makes more sense. Have you ever been in like real close proximity to like the way that farmers take care of their animals and their horses and things like that? Like seen it
Oh
in one.
yeah. Oh no. When I was a child and I was at a sheep farm, I watched the. I don't know if it's castration would be for the testicles, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, I guess it would be. But so they'd have rows of hundreds of these baby sheep, and they had a bucket,
Mhm.
and the guy would pick it up, bite the balls with his teeth, pull the balls out, spit them in a bucket, put the sheep down. The sheep
Who
runs
still
off.
does that? There's like
Um,
way better ways to go
so
about that are mostly pain.
so I'm 38 and I was probably about 7 or 8 when this happened. Me and my sister spent
Oh,
all our time in the sheep farm.
Oregon, right?
What's that?
You're in Oregon, right?
Yeah, this was in Washington that this happened.
Okay, yeah.
But
Rural Washington has some really old-timey ways of doing things. That is true.
yeah. Yeah, and then
But
they would have
like
sheepdog
cold
that if
castration, rubber bands, those are usually less painful.
yeah, that's what these guys did. But yeah, I mean it would be too complicated to get into how factory farming stuff and how these different techniques work.
Oh, I mean like regular, like I don't mean like a factory farm. I mean like in considering in the society we'd still have like holistic farming and things like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
How
yeah.
like those types of farms work.
Yeah, so
Have you
I
ever
want to do more research on it and I want to share more information on it. But from my understanding, the harm that an adult sized, especially male, sitting on the back of a horse does to a horse's back and its lifespan, it seems to be very, very bad. And so I'd want it to be for good reason. That's why I'm undecided on this topic, because as of now, if we want free range cows in the regenerative farming, then the more people can ride horses, probably the more free range the cows can be. And so that's why I'm not completely against it. But something where there's no positive outcome, like racing horses, I would say this is bad because we're only doing it for entertainment.
A lot
So
of
I'm
racing
torn.
too. That's why I'm not a big fan for it, like racing dogs and things like that.
Gotcha. I'm torn, but I lean towards humans shouldn't be allowed to ride horses anymore once we have better alternatives. It's kind of like fur. If I lived back like 300 years ago, I'd probably kill a bear to get its fur to keep my family warm. But now that we are able to make clothes out of natural things like cotton and various different products, I say we don't need fur. So, yeah.
The reason that I asked that is when I lived in Texas and when I lived in Oklahoma, there is a lot of farms. There's especially a lot of bison farms in Oklahoma. I'm not sure what's up with that. But in Texas, right up the road from my high school, there was a farm Longhorns, and I worked there for a summer. And like, it's factory farmers aren't the same as like proper holistic farmers. So we would like Longhorn cattle are mean. They really are, but you have to be very gentle with them because their horns are unnaturally large and it can hurt them. So the way that you take care of a horse, the way that you have to bond with one, the way that you have to always clean them, scrape them, make sure they're properly fed and taken care of. There is a large amount of trying to make sure that horse is okay. You always have to call it that when something goes wrong because, gone are the days of shooting a horse as soon as its leg goes back. You can just put a cast on. There's a lot that people assume about the way that farms work, especially with work animals, that isn't necessarily true anymore in a lot of places, and that is in some. It's kind of case by case, but in my experience, generally, like people care for their horses in a way like they would care for like their pets or their kids. Like they take care of them. They want to make sure they're not sick, they're not hurting. There's a lot that they do for that. And it's expensive to take care of a horse when you actually do it properly. But if you're a farmer, it's worth doing, even from a financial perspective, because it's a work animal. But a lot of them have very personal bonds with their horses.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's hop to the next one, and let's do. Since we're still on animal ones, it's probably best to let whoever voted no talk first, and then move to somebody else. So let's start with Vaibhav, because you put no on all these, but it might be yeses with a year out. So this next one is animal racing and animal shows. So this would be all kinds of animals, dogs, horses for the racing, and then shows for people showing off their cats and whatever else. You put no, not overnight, but would you say if people were told a year in advance, in 1 year, this would be outlawed?
So I'm already regretting saying yes for horse riding in a year because I just realized that what about people with loans? Because it's really about money, and I don't want to make any more homeless people in this world. So
What if the government did a buyback for any loans on animals that were going to be outlawed 1 year from today?
yeah, perfect. Forgive their loans and let them have some money and some time to figure out that okay, what you're gonna do next. And we should ban it because it's really hurting animals. It's something which is hurting more than riding the animals. So we should stop it completely. But the problem is there are regular people who uses their pets for shows, and people are competing against each other. Who which animals is listening and which animals is acting according to the breeder or the person who takes care of them. So
Hmm.
problem with that is that's something extremely personal. Are we talking about that as well when it comes to shows, or just the shows which happens on stage?
All shows involving animals where people bring their animals to show what, like sometimes they'll do things where they'll guide pigs through mazes and hopping through hoops. Sometimes they'll just have a cat sitting there showing how majestic it is, and judges come around and they look at the cat's fur or whatever. Anything that we
Ah,
would call um, animals getting like viewed by an audience and deciding that they get awards, anything in that realm whatsoever, we'd just call shows.
so I mostly work in Rajasthan and they have pigs, wild pigs. So
Hmm.
they domesticated them like 50, 60 years back.
Hmm.
So I promoted that we could make road shows, we could make shows. Instead of eating them, we can make money out of them. So society won't hurt. And so in certain situations, yes, please ban it because it's hurting the animals. But there are situations if the option is being eaten or being part of the shows, I'd say being part of the shows is much better option.
Okay, Travis, what do you think about that specific detail? Is it better to uh, kill and eat these pigs, or is it better to put them in shows, or is there like a third option?
Um, well, it depends on the nature of the show. Um, like it might be better in certain circumstances to have them in a show. I guess my main concern with shows would just be like the exploitation of animals during the shows. Like for a lot of shows, we're gonna be like forcing animals to do things. Like circuses and things, which cause a lot of suffering to animals.
Hmm. Gotcha. Well, so if I guess in my mind, if there were pigs that could be killed and eaten, or they could be put in shows, and those were kind of their only options, I would
I'll be
say
back in a
kill.
sec.
Okay, I'd say killing them is probably even better than either of those two. But yeah, you might be right. It might come down to how are they treated in the show. But I guess I just don't know if there's any benefit to having shows like that, unless our goal is to keep as many as possible alive. Let's see. Okay, let's go on to the next one because yeah, we're actually running a little lower on time. Should we outlaw snakes as pets? And then we also did cats as pets. Let me double check on something really quick. I just want to see. Travis. Okay. So, Vabehab, you said no on these. Are these similar to the other ones, or at least well?
No, it's this one is different. This one is completely different because my problem with snake as a pet is that people will have to breed mices, and that mices are being eaten for no good reason. Like they can be in wild. Snake usually eat less in wild, so overall less suffering. But if someone wants to keep like couple of snakes in their house and they're willing to catch the mice or something and feed it, I think that's a better option. So what we should ban is breeding mice to feed other animals, not the snakes directly, because people are emotionally attached with the cats, snakes, and those emotions do matter.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. In our society, we've already banned the breeding of animals. And so, or at least the artificial breeding of animals. And we've banned the selling of animals. So people can't buy mice at stores. They can't do forced breeding. So if anybody's going to feed their snake, it would either be what you just said, which is catching wild mice, or it would be getting wild mice, leaving them in a cage of sorts, and letting them breed on their own, and then feeding the snake that way.
So that breeding should also be legal, and if they're catching, it's fine. Other than that, I have no problem with snakes because snakes really aren't suffering in their cages, and snakes are perfectly fine sitting in a small box. They like those situations, just like
Interesting.
insects. Snakes are not something who wants to be in jungle. They
Okay.
really care about food and sex. That's it.
Okay. Can you send me an article or something on that to share with people? Because as of right now, I
I
don't
can send
think.
you something like that.
Okay,
I can
I
send
don't.
you.
I'm against those things, and I don't think those are good reasons. But I'm going to let Travis share his thoughts. What do you think? Do you think there's a chance that snakes want to be in a tiny cage and fed wild mice?
I mean, they might want that, but I don't think the mice want to be fed to the snake.
And in the wild, they have an option to run away, essentially.
Yeah, like I wouldn't support like capturing wild animals to feed them to snakes, especially if you're going to be feeding them live to snakes.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Eric, what are your thoughts on this?
So I have one for the cats and snakes. Are we doing those together or separate?
Let's just do snakes right now, and then we'll hop over to
Okay.
cats.
I actually used to own snakes. Snakes only eat once. It depends on the size, but usually they only eat once every few weeks, every month or so. They don't eat very often, and generally they like mine. I had a 5.5 foot ball python, and we had him from the time he was very small till he was huge. And generally, keeping a snake, so like snakes, to what Vapob said, they do like small spaces. In the wild, they don't really like to be out unless they're sunning. They like to be in very small, confined places. That's like why when you walk around in the wild, especially in the south, when you step on a log or a rock, you have to listen because if you hear a rattle, you need to back up because you're threatening their home and they will bite you. So generally speaking, having them in a terrarium, as long as it's not teeny tiny for their size, they're perfectly happy with it. As long as you have heating lights and as long as you feed them often enough, it's fine. But generally, they'll tell you when they're hungry, they shed just fine. As a matter of fact, they shed better as long as you're keeping them proper. And sometimes they can be picky, so that can be a problem. Sometimes you do have to feed them mice. Like mine wouldn't eat rats, even though he was big. He just, for some reason, didn't like them, but he would eat mice. You can buy frozen ones that were already dead. You can buy them live. A lot of snakes won't eat them unless they're live because of the way they hunt. But generally, I don't think there's too much of a problem with having snakes as long as they're not like venomous snakes. And even then, you can get licensure for that, so you can make sure you take care of them properly. Um, they live better, safer lives with people. Like they have a better
Gotcha.
quality of life. They live longer in captivity.
Yeah,
It's
you should
just
you should
I
send
think
over an article on that as well. Vape is going to do that, and you should do one too. And I want to check it out. I like learning things. Let me see what Jeremy said over here real quick, and then we'll move on. Still more beings than the one snake, and probably more sentient than the snake itself. Okay, so yeah, Jeremy's saying, however many mice or rats you have to feed the snake over its lifetime, it's that many animals dying and suffering.
I would argue that mice are not more sentient than a snake, but sure.
Yeah, I think their intelligence level is higher, but it depends on how you view sentience. But yeah, anyways, let's. I agree that we shouldn't feed animals to other animals. If you have to kill multiple animals to feed one animal, I see the argument in letting whatever happens in nature happen in nature, but doing it yourself, catching a wild mouse to feed a wild snake, that you're considering both your pets, but you're going to feed one to another now. I'm not in favor of it, but I will read the articles you guys send. Now, only 3 of the 4 of us here are vegan. Eric up here, top right, not vegan. Let's all call him bad names. The only out of the 6 animal topics, only one of them did he vote yes on, and that was outlawing cats. And then and Vabehav does not want to outlaw cats. So Eric, as the non-vegan, share your thoughts on why you want to outlaw cats, and then Vabehav, how about you respond to them?
Cats are horrible for the ecosystem. They're highly invasive. They've run out hundreds of bird species to extinction. There's not a lot of things that naturally predate them, especially unless they're in the areas that domesticated cats originally came from. They sometimes they just kill things to kill things. Like anybody who's ever had a cat has seen one. If they're an outside cat, carrying like a dead bird and just drop it at your feet, or like bat around a mouse for 20 minutes while it dies and it breaks its leg. Cats are awful, and they eat a lot more animals than a snake would. That's for sure across their lifetime, if you feed them properly, considering that they're carnivores. But generally, I'm against them because they breed completely out of control. Because there's not a lot of natural predators for them, they end up fighting and hurting each other constantly. They wipe out populations of birds and lizards. They're like genocidal almost for those kinds of creatures. Like I'm not a big fan. Also, I mean, I'm a little biased because you might not be able to see it, but there's a scar right here. When I was a kid, a cat took a big hunk out of my lip, so I have like a natural inborn dislike of cats from that. But generally speaking, from a very like impassionate point of view, it's just they're very bad for the ecosystem.
All right, Vabehav, go for it.
I totally agree. And cat is the only animal I would support the genocide for. But the problem is, again, people are attached to their animals. So completely stop the breeding. No animal should breed ever. No cat should breed ever again. And in 20 years, we'll achieve that. But for now, for example, I'm at mom's place. I have a neighbor here, 70 years old woman. She have 3 cats. Now those 3 cats are her life. Taking them away is really bad for her. So this is the factor people don't usually think about. Because, I know you'll have to kill more animals, but we also have an option for that, because that one of my guy always provides the food for those cats. She keeps that in freezer, and she can feed that food to over for a week. So something like that can be happen. We can we can actually not increase any suffering and keep those cats for their lifetime and stop them from breeding completely. And so there will be no need to outlaw them.
Well, that's how a lot of people feel about their horses. That's how a lot of people feel about any animal that they could keep that they consider a pet. I know people who keep pigs. Like it's when you bring pets into the situation, it changes for a lot of things.
Mhm.
People always draw a very personal relationship with their pets.
Travis, do you have a response to what Vabehav just said about cats?
Well, I would say I would vote in favor of outlawing cats again. Well, I favor getting rid of pets in general, but especially carnivorous pets who you're going to have to sacrifice other animals for the well-being of. And I would also like to echo Christian's comment in the live chat here, who says, "Name the trait, Eric."
I was going to
With
bring that up.
yeah,
I think Eric and Jerem talked about veganism not too long ago, and Name the Trait got brought up. Name the trait that if about animals that if true about humans would lead you to kill the human to eat them. To answer this really quick, Eric, if you were a millionaire, would you be a vegan?
As long as like my doctors could confirm to me that it wouldn't worsen any of my mental health issues or that it wouldn't cause any kind of negative health side effects, sure.
Okay, then we'll save vegan talk for converting
well,
Eric. For
I
the
wasn't
future.
actually talking about veganism there. I was talking about I think Christian was referring to the comment about his view on snakes, where like it's like he was viewing it as permissible to feed mice to snakes, and like would you
Because
view it
snakes
as
don't wipe
permissible
out
to
the
feed?
entire population of species of mice through the feeding of them.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Snakes don't drive mice to extinction because we're feeding them once a month. Cats get out and then they wipe out populations of birds. Like snakes are a lot
Okay,
safer.
well they
as a
don't.
pet.
Well, would you take that view regarding humans though? Like if we were feeding humans to snakes, is that okay because they don't drive humans to extinction? Like the
It
problem is
depends on
you're
the kind of
causing
human.
suffering
So
to the
if you
individual
feed
mice.
rapists and pedophiles to snakes, I'm not really going to have too much of a problem with it.
Okay, well, let's just say it's a human with the same. They're not a rapist. They're not a pedophile. They're just a human with the same mental capacities as a mouse. Is it okay to feed them to a snake?
With the same mental capacity as a mouse,
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be moral to do anything to that person if they only had the mental capacity of a mouse. That's somebody who needs a caregiver all day. That brings up a totally different type of
But
conversation.
can their caregiver be a snake?
You could argue some people are snakes.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm
People
just
to
saying,
snakes
like,
is a
if we
different-
wouldn't be
it's a different
okay with
moral
feeding those humans to snakes, why would we be okay with feeding mice to snakes?
Probably because mice, more often than not, are generally considered by most people to be nothing more than a pest or something that spreads disease. If I had to guess, that's why most people are okay with that, but they wouldn't be okay with doing it to people. That and people have a more ingrained like social feeling towards other people than they do to mice, even if you own mice.
Yeah, but I'm not asking
a-
about other people. I'm asking about your specific reasoning.
My specific reason that it's not okay to feed people to snakes
Yeah.
because like people are different than mice. I'm not really sure.
Well, let's
And
let's
what's
hold off
the
on this
morally
because
relevant difference?
Morally relevant difference. There's more
Yeah.
suffering done to a person who's slowly suffocated than a mice who dies a lot quicker and is eaten naturally as part of the food chain anyway.
Okay, let's say the suffering was equalized in both cases. Are you
The
still
suffering was
against feeding?
equalized. Well, I'm not really for people keeping snakes big enough to eat people anyway. You can't properly take care of them. But let's say I was. If all that snake could eat was people, then no. But there's alternate ideas, right? If you were going to feed a snake that was that big, you could feed them a hog or a deer because that's what they would normally eat in the wild anyway.
Okay, let's say it's a snake that will only eat humans.
Well, then that snake doesn't need to live. It doesn't have a reliable food source, and it's only going to die out anyway because people are going to kill it off. So no, I don't
Let's
have
say
a
it
problem
did have a
taking care of
reliable
those.
food source. We did have a reliable way of feeding it humans. Is it okay?
Well, then that would imply that we're breeding people for food, in which case that would be an entirely inherently bad system. That'd be
Well, I don't
Soylent
see why
Green.
that would be bad, but it wouldn't be bad to do it to mice. Like, whatever
I
we're
don't
doing
believe
to
these
humans.
humans are on equal standing with mice.
okay, we got to cut it off there. So this is
Okay,
great,
well, I
and I
didn't
think
hear like a morally relevant difference name.
there
so-
isn't one. And Travis is really good at this line of questioning, and I love it. And I'm excited to hear you guys go back and forth for like an hour. So we're going to set up that talk in the future. But real quick, just because I only got about 10, 15 minutes on this talk, I'm going to respond. I'm going to say a few comments here or read a few comments here, and then we'll go into the next couple laws. So when I pointed out that Eric's the only non-vegan here, Dillian in the comments said, bad, Eric, bad. Uh, Dillian's great, by the way. He's just joking. Or I mean, it's sort of halfway. Okay, so Jeremy said some good things, but I'm going to skip past it anyways. Let's see. Contrarian 420 says snake ownership is also entirely for the novelty and pleasure of the human owner. There's no practical reason for it, like home defense with dogs, pest reduction with cats.
That's true.
Dogs are terrible for home defense, just to be like totally frank about that. If somebody breaks into your house and they know you have a dog, all they need to have is rawhide, and that dog will follow them through your house. The only thing that you can do to make sure your house doesn't get robbed, like ideally, just as like a little fun fact for the day, is to have your windows professionally laminated. Otherwise, your dog is not going to save anything in your house. It's pretty rare that a dog works out as a good home defense system.
Christian said, I'm not a millionaire. Why is that relevant? Because he's vegan and he wonders why I brought that up to Eric. I brought that up to narrow down a few factors, because if somebody says that if they were a millionaire, they'd be vegan, but otherwise they wouldn't, it's showing that a big part of the problem is that either for where they live or for their capabilities or their access to get to stores or whatever, is their reasoning. Whether we find that good or not, that might be their reasoning, so it's good to know. And so in this case, for Eric, it would come down to money and the knowledge of health. So if his doctor and what he recognized from his own outcomes were good outcomes on a vegan diet, and if he had the amount of money he would call needed for being vegan, he'd be vegan. So it just helps us. It's kind of like answering hypotheticals. It helps us figure out reasons in a very generic way.
Just as a clarification, it wouldn't have to be millions. It would just be whatever I need to make sure that I can live comfortably and budget like well enough to live a good enough life that I could be okay with it. I don't have to be like a million. That's not even something I aspire to.
Yeah, I've just heard you talk about having time to cook or having ways to get to the store without driving, that kind of thing. So I was just trying to make it simple by narrowing that down, and the rest can come into
I'm just clarifying for the comment.
Yeah, for
millions.
Sure.
Budget.
Okay, there's a lot going on in the chat, so I'm going to switch over. So we went through cats. Okay, last one on animals. This says, should we outlaw veal? Let's start with Travis here and then go to Eric. Travis, do you want to explain why you think we should outlaw veal? And then, Eric's gone. And then after you explain it, let's see if you've convinced Eric.
Well, I mean, I voted in favor of banning veal, because I am in favor of banning the selling of all animal products. And the reasoning would just be that we wouldn't accept selling human corpses. Like, we wouldn't accept farming humans for food and then selling their corpses. So I don't see a morally relevant difference between humans and animals that would justify doing it in the animal case, but not the human case.
If you were going to, if you knew that the a decent amount of humans were thinking about outlawing veal, but not other things, and you thought this was even though you'd want all animal farming outlawed, if somebody said why should we outlaw veal, and you were going to try to convince them just of that one topic, what would you find to be the best argument to outlaw just veal?
I mean, it would just be a function of, I don't really have like a veal specific case. It would just be like, my reasoning would just be like, okay, like we should ban it all, but like if we're going to only ban one, I mean, if we're going to do it in this piecemeal way, like banning something is better than banning nothing.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll share my thoughts. I assumed ours might be the same. Well, so I agree with Travis in general for the most part, but the reason I look at veal in a more passionate way than others is because even though we can't know for sure the emotions of animals, when calves are removed from their mothers so the milk can be taken from the mothers for humans, in plenty of things I've seen, the mothers cry out in devastation. They'll chase after the farmer taking the calf. It's this pretty sad moment, and I don't know if we should necessarily appeal to emotions we don't understand, but if we have good reason to think that we're causing torment by removing the calves. This is a good reason. And then the other problem with veal is not only does this lead to when the calf is fed, it's being fed some kind of a food that's not designed for it, but then to make veal have the taste it has, the calf can't gain muscle, so they tie the calf up to a post and they don't let it move at all, so it doesn't gain muscle for a couple weeks, and then
And that's what they do with COVID beef.
and then they kill it quick. So they starve it. They don't let it gain muscle. They take it from its mother. All of those things combined, just so people can get a specific taste of this young animal. So, anyways, Eric, what are your thoughts on this?
So what I was saying before is that I know of an argument that I've heard plenty of times for specifically banning veal and not anything else, and it's that they're baby animals. They're like young cows. People are generally opposed to that.
Well, I
Part of
think
the
that's a bad
reason
animal. I think that's a bad argument. I strongly disagree with that argument. What are your thoughts on the thing I said? And I'm only rushing you and pushing that aside because we only have like 10 minutes.
So, from what you said, like part of the reason that I'm not for banning veal is because there are a couple of options that come up when you're just farming for milk and you take the calves. They get left on the side of the road so they can die. They get killed immediately and tossed away, or they just kind of end up becoming food cows and then they don't become veal and they just kind of grow up in the farming system. If you're going to take the veal, if you're going to take like a baby cow from its mother, at the very least, there's some utility in using it for food rather than just ditching it on the side of the road. So like that's pretty much the only framework that I have for like why I'm not totally opposed to getting rid of veal. Same thing for lamb and things like that.
Okay. Vapehav, what are your thoughts? Is this another case where you said no for overnight, but within a year's time of warning, you would change your mind?
Okay, so I thought I was under the impression that veal is a young cow which was born and killed right away. So I was okay with that. Instead of starving it, it's fine to kill it and let people eat it. So now what you just told me, I got additional data, and now I think we should ban it because no one should go through this suffering of being hungry so someone can get some sort of different taste. That's just inhumane.
Okay.
So because in India beef is banned, so there's a reason I was unaware about this.
Gotcha. Eric, would you say that you would be in favor of eating young cows, but against the starving of them for the certain taste?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they were just processing veal right away instead of like tying them to a post and then making them starve, because that's like foie gras. The reason it tastes the way it does is because they use a funnel and jam it down the goose's neck so they can force feed it certain
And
things.
you're
so
against that as well, correct?
Yeah, they do it
Okay.
to forcibly disease the liver so that it can taste a certain way.
Okay, I think I will maybe reword the veal question and send it out if it does not pass. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one, this is Phil's law. Should the standard be that everyone's organs are donated once the person is dead, unless they personally opt out? Let me check real quick. I'm just seeing.
I voted no on that.
You voted no on that. Okay, explain yourself, sir.
The manpower it would take to properly make sure that those organs could actually be used would be immense. And like most organs from most people are not safe to be transplanted. There's a reason the transplant lists are so long. It's because you have to go through an extreme process to make sure that there's no disease, there's no bacterial infections that people didn't know about, there's no cancer in those organs.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes into making sure an organ's transplantable. And if we had if it would put a lot of stress on our medical system to have to go through that process every single time somebody died, especially if we're looking at America in a country of over 350 million people. It's just not a viable system.
Okay, well, who wants to respond to that? Okay, Travis is hopping in. Let's let Travis
Okay,
do it real
let
quick.
Travis do it first. Yeah.
Well, I
Let's
don't
do it.
see why we would like we couldn't make some determination on like basing it off what we deem to be necessary.
Well, we would, but that's why the manpower would be so immense because it's a really stringent process. Because if you take an organ that on the surface looks okay and then you put it into somebody, it could turn out that there's other things wrong with it that you didn't know. And it could kill that person. It could force the body to reject it despite the steroids. It could do all kinds of bad shit can happen if you transplant an organ that's not like actually fit for donation. That's why you like if you're going to give your kidney to somebody, they run a lot of tests. They make sure you drink a lot of water. They do biopsies. They do a lot of lab testing and things like that. It's a
I'm gonna-
very, very
I'm
complicated.
going to interject real
Why
quick
wouldn't this
because
apply to what we have now?
It does. It's just that we don't make every single person who dies an organ donor. And even most people who have organ donor cards, their organs can't actually be used. Like in order to make sure that everybody's organs could be used, we would have to enact a very stringent system of dieting. We'd have to have free medical access so that people could make sure they were properly taken care of.
I'm
There
gonna
would have to
pause you
be
real
all
quick.
of that.
I'm going to pause you real quick because the law writer himself is in the chat, and he says it's not a law mandating that all organs have to be used. So, anyways, you guys can go back at it.
No, I know that it's not a law mandating that they all have to be used. That would be insane. But I'm not arguing from that perspective. It's that making sure that they can be used is already a very long and stringent process when there's not even that many people donating anyway. If most people who died were donating organs, we would probably have longer wait times. We would have more doctors wasting more time on more bodies that don't have viable organs. If anybody's taken certain medications in their life, they cannot donate their organs. If they've drank too much in their life, if they smoke, there's a lot of things that go into whether or not an organ is viable. And trying to ensure that every person who dies of organs can actually be used would create like this huge backlog. It's just not viable unless half our population are doctors.
I guess I'm just kind of confused because if somebody's at the hospital and then they die, and then if their organs can't be used, they can't be used, then it doesn't matter. If their organs can be used, if a doctor goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a doctor and these organs can be used," then why would it be bad to use them?
It's a lot more complicated than that. Like it's really complicated. As soon as you pull the organs out of somebody, you have to drain all the blood, and then you have to start doing tests. And you have
Okay,
to start making
Vabehab is
sure-
very upset, and he wants to share with you why he's upset.
Okay, it's really upsetting that because 80% of that work can be done when person is alive. So anyone can go voluntarily in a hospital and say, since I am an organ donor, take my blood and now make a profile out of it. Now we have a profile. When
It's
that
not
person
just blood.
dies, I said 80%, not 100%. And when what 20% is left can be done. And I'm not saying that we have to use every organ, but let's say there's a person who needs a heart and there's a person who just died. Checking that and making extra jobs to do this is a good idea because when thousands of people dying every day just because we don't have organs, it would be awesome to have extra jobs and extra organs.
Having
We
extra
wanna
jobs
use
in the
our-
field where you have a really stringent pass to actually get into the field wouldn't actually do a whole lot. Like we have doctors. It's just like the process. It's not 80% isn't blood work. You have to actually like examine the organs. You have to make sure that there's no lesions. You have to look at things that you wouldn't be able to see in the blood work, and that's what takes time. And when people need heart transplants, that's already the process for hearts. If somebody dies, you immediately go, is this heart viable for this person? And then you look at it, you have a couple of days, you have a few hours where you have to go over it and make sure it looks okay. And then they have to check it after it transports to make sure it's all right to transplant. It's a process that's really complicated. And if you took away any of the steps that's in it, it would probably lead to more people ending up with faulty organs. That's part of the
can
problem.
talk process,
It's a really, really complicated.
Okay. This is a complicated topic. Eric, if you could send some info on why this isn't best or why it's hard to use organs after deaths and stuff like that, definitely send it my way. I'll read it. I'll share it.
Yeah,
with
I'll be
everybody.
sending as well in the group. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This one's interesting. So this is Vabhab's law that he is unsure of his own answer on. but it could be because of my wording. Should men
Yes,
be allowed
that's
to
your wording, not me.
Okay. Should men be allowed to sign away parental rights before a baby is born and not owe child support? Now, this will be an interesting talk because I love when somebody is undecided on a topic and then a conversation can lead to more understanding. So, the first two topics out of the 10 I am undecided on, and I think I was convinced of a direction to go when talking about the horse riding one. But with this one, Travis is undecided on the topic, and I want to share my thoughts on this topic real quick, and then you guys, then we'll go to Vabehab because he's the one that wrote it. But something I didn't think about till this morning. So the idea of the topic is saying essentially, if women have the right to, when they're pregnant, they can decide, oh, I don't want a baby because I can't afford it, or all these various different reasons. They can abort it by 20 weeks in our society. And so if a woman can opt out without the man saying, no, I want to keep this baby, then the idea is that the man can opt out and say, well, I can't afford it. I would rather it be aborted. But if you're going to keep it, it's yours. And I'm piecing out. And I am torn on that. But one thing that led me to vote yes on this, which I voted yes, is that when a baby's born, a mom and dad of that baby could say, you know, we're young, we can't afford it. We're signing our rights away and giving it up for adoption. And they're both doing this thing. So I feel like if both of them can put it up for adoption, then also either of them can. If a man says like, oh, I wish she would put it up for adoption with me, I'm putting it up for adoption myself, but it turns out she's adopting it. Or other way around, she's all like, I don't want it, but I didn't want to kill it, so I gave birth to it, but I don't want it, I'm putting it up for adoption. But if he doesn't want it up for adoption, he can keep it. But I think each parent should have the right to essentially put it up for adoption, if that makes sense. And anyway, so yeah, Vabehab, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so basic idea was that no one should be fined or any kind of punishment for having sex with an adult, and if there's a, especially when only if it's a consensual sex. So that's the basic idea. Now the situation in current state, if woman wants to keep the baby, man is forced to pay for that child. In most cases, there are situations where a woman is paying a man for taking care of the kids. That's exception. But now I don't want anyone as a person that anyone to tell me that you have to pay me certain amount because you had sex with me a year ago. That's just that makes no sense. The only reason I provide I think we should have exception where if the couple is married or they had a proper contract, that man said, okay, I'm going to pay for that child. Now that man must pay because he said, okay, let's bring a baby in the world and let's take care of the baby. Or if they're married, so in case of marriage, it's in most cases, in majority, couple wants to get pregnant, they wants to have baby, and in when most of the people won't sign a prenup, so because they love each other, they don't think about the future. So same can be happen with a child. So that child shouldn't live in poverty just because their parents forgot to make a document. So in that situation, men should pay.
Okay, Eric, what are your thoughts? Oh, Eric, you're muted. You'll want to unmute and then start over.
Can you remind me how I voted for that?
Nope. You're going to tell me, and then I'm going to tell you if you changed your mind.
So with this, there's part of me that's for it. There's part of me that's against it, especially like with my opinion being shaped by living in America. I think that generally speaking, if the guy wants to opt out, he can, or at least he should be able to. But at the same time, like we need to make financial consideration for that. We need to understand how expensive kids are and try to make sure that the kid can actually be taken care of. But I think that instead of making the dad do that, we could use government funds to try to help people who have kids and things like that so that they don't have to rely on a dad that doesn't want to be there. So like mostly I'm for that, but there are some caveats that would make me against it.
Okay, so in this case of voting how it's written, would you want to put yes, no, or undecided?
I'm undecided because there's a few things that I want to have like ironed out about our society and the way that we handle social funding before I could be totally certain of how I feel
Okay.
about that.
And I think that's perfectly fine to do. I do undecided on a couple things here and there. Some things I do yes or no, keeping in mind that we will fill in the blanks as we go. But if something's like very specific, where if certain things weren't in place, then it would be a yes or it would be a no. It's good to go undecided. So, okay, Travis, did anything you heard? Do you have thoughts on, or do you have any interest in voting now, a yes or a no, or anything you want to share?
Well, the reason I voted undecided is because, like, the proposal doesn't specify a replacement system. Like, if it said, like, okay, we're going to get rid of the current child support, and we're going to replace that with, like, a program funded by the federal government that serves, like, the same overall purpose, then I would vote in favor of it. But because it didn't, like, specify that, a replacement, I didn't vote for it.
Okay, so in that case, though, you would say yes if the government was going to pay the child support.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I thought about that earlier today too, and I think that would be what I would want as well. Similar to I'm anti-abortion, but if a society could not afford it, like if children were starving, there were no options for foster care and adoption and all that kind of stuff, I'm very pro-abortion, even up until like a year or so after birth. But as soon as a government can afford to have like adoption agencies and things like that, I'm very much in favor of every human that gives birth that does not want their child. They can take it to a place and say, somebody else take care of this. And I would prefer the government take care of it with an adoption agency. So same
Just out
goes
of curiosity,
same goes
do
here.
you have a an adoption framework from like another country that you would prefer that we have?
I think that would be
Because
something
like the
worth looking
American one
into.
is a big problem for me, and that's part of the reason why I don't consider adoption to be like a viable option because our adoption system is like a meat grinder.
Gotcha.
So that's why I was just curious about that.
I think that's worth looking into. Here's the thing, though. So I have a separate talk I'm doing in 45 minutes. But before that, I got to run and do a thing. So I was going to let you three stay and talk. And you guys could either talk about adoption stuff like Eric was just talking about, or the only two laws we haven't gotten to. You guys could talk about those
Alcohol and
two.
tattoo.
What's that?
Alcohol and tattoo.
Oh, yes. Alcohol and tattoo. So the question in our society, adult age is 19. The question is, can 19-year-olds drink alcohol, or should it be like 21? How it is in the U.S. I guess in Canada it's 18, which is adult age, and I don't know what it is in India. And then the other thing is tattoo at 16.
21.
Oh, it's 21 in India. Okay. And then the tattoo at 16 basically is saying in our society, legal age of adulthood is 19. If somebody is 16, 17, or 18, and their parents say, yes, you can get this tattoo, the question is, can you get it? And similar to how an adult right now, an 18-year-old in the U.S., can go get a swastika tattoo, then the question is, if you say that a non-adult, 16, 17, or 18-year-old, can get a tattoo if their parents agree, would they be able to get something like a swastika tattoo, or would they be able to get a tattoo on their face, or are there any limitations? So I'm going to let you guys do this thing. I'm going to, anyways, anybody can hop off whenever they want, and I'll watch back and check this out. Take care.
The alcohol question is one that I'm more prepared to talk about, but the tattoos one is an interesting one to me because like when I was in high school, I knew people who had tattoos. Like I know it's already legal here to get a tattoo when you're under 18, as long as you have parental consent. But the alcohol one is a more complicated, like not complicated, but a more nuanced topic that I'm more prepared to talk at length about. But if you want to do tattoos first, we can do that.
Eric, I don't know why, but your audio is so difficult to understand for some reason. Maybe you are not using a dedicated mic.
Internet.
Yeah, so can you do something about it? Because
Can you
I
hear me a little better?
couldn't understand anything.
Can you hear me any better?
Yeah, it's much better. It's much better. Perfect.
Okay, I just had to
Okay.
rotate my headphones. So what
Huh.
I said was
So
the alcohol question is one that I'm more prepared to talk at length about because it's a more nuanced conversation. But like the tattoos one, I can also do. We can do that first if you want to, because like I knew people in high school who had tattoos. Like it's already something you can do legally here when you're underage, as long as your parents give you the okay, or as long as you're emancipated from your parents. But the alcohol one is one that I have a more long form idea about.
so do you support drinking alcohol at the age of 19 since the
No,
that person is adult? No?
not at all.
No, okay. So the problem I do because whoever wants to drink at the age of 19 is already drinking. So just to stop them from, no one is stopping just because they can't buy it legally. So instead of putting them in legal trouble, let them have that responsibility. And I don't see a perfect reason, a very good reason to say, okay, you are 19, you can't drink it for next 2 years, but you can vote, you can drive, you can do whatever. We trust you with responsibilities, but we don't trust you with alcohol, which is not actually a big of a deal. So what's your stand?
So with me, the reason that I have why I don't think you should be able to drink at 19 is a purely medical one. When your frontal lobe doesn't stop developing until between 21 and 25, depending on a couple of factors, and drinking alcohol can cause stunted growth in your brain. It can cause memory issues if you do it too early. It can cause a lot of problems. So making it harder for somebody who's underage to get alcohol is a good thing. And most people that I know that are alcoholics, most people that I've seen that are, have been drinking from a very young age. So making it harder to get it would make alcoholism possibly become less of a problem. On top of that, alcohol is responsible for more like domestic abuse, child abuse, car accidents, fatal traffic deaths than any other substance that people take. It is a genuinely like dangerous thing, and we just don't view it that way because people have normalized it. And I think that if we could properly raise awareness around it while still keeping it legal, because I'm not for banning of any mind altering substance that you could take, and just making it so that people who aren't too young don't start drinking alcohol because it is wildly addictive. I'm all for that. Like I was happy with the tobacco nicotine ban going up to 21 instead of 18 for a very similar reason. That's why I don't. That's where I come from. Is like medically, it would be more sound to make people wait.
What about the fact that they are already consuming alcohol? They just can't buy
Some
it, but
people
they are
are, but making
consuming
it
it.
harder
80%
makes it a
or
lot more
90%
difficult.
maybe. Who wants to, they are doing it.
Not really. I mean, like, yeah, a lot of people do when they're younger. They usually get that from their families or from friends who find a way to get alcohol from their families. But generally speaking, like making it harder to get and not banning it outright would still reduce the usage by a pretty wide margin. Because, like, say that you raise the age of 25, there's not a lot of people who are under 22 or 23 that know 25-year-olds that can buy them alcohol. It's harder for those people to meet up, right? It's harder for those people to convince other people to buy it for them. Making it more difficult would definitely be a good step. I don't know, like I said, I'm not for banning anything like substance wise,
What do
despite
you
the
think,
damage,
Travis?
because I think once you're old enough to make those decisions properly, your decision is your decision. If you want to do meth, you're probably going to do it anyway. There's no reason to make it illegal, but having an age limit on it would be a good thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't favor lowering it. I would keep it the same as it is now. Um, or maybe
You
even
agree with
possibly.
Eric?
Yeah, I agree with what he said.
Okay, so that's not something I'm really passionate about because I'm over that age. I really don't care. So, but there's something, the tattoo part, which is more interesting. So, getting a tattoo and what would should be a limit? Let's talk about that if you guys are okay with it, both of you.
I have a pretty different view on it, I think, than most people. I think you should be able to get them whenever, especially if they are culturally significant tattoos. So like the Maori, when you like come of age, they do tattoos on the chins all across right here, right? And that's like symbolism for men and women that you come into adulthood, you're a man, you're a woman. It's a coming of age thing, right? There's a lot of cultures that do that. Some of them do stippling, some do scarring, some do tattoos. So I think it's perfectly fine in that there should be some extra allowances to make it a little easier if they are culturally significant tattoos.
So, you think
It's
that
not
tattoos
something
are,
that
but tattoos are not actually permanent for most people. Most people can remove them.
well, that's not really a consideration for me because like most people who get tattoos don't want to remove them. Most of the tattoo removal, at least from what I've seen, are either tattoos that you've gotten while drunk or otherwise high, which you shouldn't be able to get them when you're drunk anyway because alcohol is a blood thinner and it causes problems. But that or like swastikas or like hateful type of symbology usually is something somebody wants to get removed. But generally speaking, like tattoo removal is done for those kinds of reasons. A drunken mistake, a mistake you did when you were high, maybe a friend of yours said they could do tattoos and it's a really terrible one that you don't want to pay to get covered, you just want to get it removed. But generally, if you're going to get a professional tattoo done, I think that there's like a process you should go through where like you determine, you sit on it for a while, you determine it's tattoo you want. Like there's one that I want that's this whole part. Let me get in the frame. It's this whole part of my arm that I've wanted since I was 13, and I never got it. One, because it's expensive, but two, because I wanted to make sure that it's something that I really wanted to do because it's a video game tattoo, and you know sometimes it's just something you like in the moment. As it turns out, I still want to get it done, and it's been 12 years. So had I gotten it done when I was 17, I would still be just as happy with it as I am now, as I would be now. So tattoos oftentimes are things people get because they mean something to them. They're culturally significant. And I'm all for that, right? Like if you're just somebody who's getting one on a whim because it's something that you really like at the moment, I think that there should be some more consideration for that. But generally, I don't have a problem with people getting tattoos when they're young. Maybe not face tattoos, unless of course they're like Maori and they want to get them done for the cultural reasons, then I'm all for it. But if it's just some whimsy, like you want to get like damage tattooed across your forehead, you should probably have to wait on that one. But but like
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course. Face tattoos
generally
should be
I'm okay
considered
with people
something else.
getting
Yeah.
face tattoos that
Travis.
aren't culturally significant. That's where I stand on.
Um, yeah, so I do think there should be well, I initially voted yes on it, but I'm actually not sure about it. I think it might depend on the type of tattoo. Like if you're getting like some small minor tattoo, I feel like that's fine, but I mean, if it's some like major tattoo, like you were just talking about, like on your face, I don't know that a 16-year-old should be allowed to get that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So
I think
there's
that
one more.
tattoos that symbolize hate groups and stuff like that should be barred for people underage as well, because like a lot of people who get swastikas when they're like 16 get them because that's how their families are and they're raised into that. But once they get older, they
Yeah, they
realize that
don't
they don't
understand
really
what that thing is.
want
Yeah.
that. Yeah, when they get older and they realize they're out of that environment and they realize it's not actually something that they believe in anymore, it's a lot
But
harder to get a swastika.
we are ignoring the fact that those tattoos can only be done when there is an adult. Adult as in someone who takes care of those kids, parents or some other authority from the family.
Yeah, like that's the only reason that when it came to face tattoos that I made a caveat for culturally significant ones because a lot of cultures, especially in like
Hmm.
Samoa and places like that, face tattoos are very important to them. It's they're all very unique. It's to symbolize who you are. It shows that you've grown into yourself. It's a big thing, and they're very proud of them. And it's something that I think you should keep it like okay because we
Yeah,
shouldn't be washing out other people's cultures when they come here and saying like your culture doesn't matter because you live in
exactly.
America. Like you're an American, it doesn't matter what you do. You should be able to have those kinds of considerations. There's even like native tribes that did that and still do to an extent. And I'm perfectly fine with a 16-year-old who's done some coming of age to signify that.
Okay. Uh, I just wanted to say, I have a suggestion. I wanted to confirm with you guys if it makes sense. We usually get three options to vote: yes, no, and undecided. I wanted to add
Mhm.
another tab saying additional information in which we can say, like, for example, I wanted to say, yes, ban the cats, but not overnight. So we can do those
Yeah.
things and we can discuss those things, and other people can decide other than the person who wrote those things. Okay, then okay, other people can decide, okay, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. So in that way we'll have more than yes, no, and undecided. What do you think, guys? Is it a good idea?
I think that's a good idea. That's usually what I use undecided for, is I need more information in the future before I make a decision on this. So it'd be good to just have that as an option specifically so that we can leave more information for Carson so that we can parse things out a little better.
Fair enough.
I don't really see the I guess I don't really see the advantage of like adding an additional option instead of just using undecided.
That, but a person can be something other than undecided, because in most situations I want to go with the majority, but I don't want to do it overnight, or I want to make an exception in that case, because I am perfectly okay with banning a lot of things in markets in society, but I'm not okay with doing this overnight or other XYZ things. So everyone has an option to add that part, and we can have discussion over that, and we can fix those issues. So we can probably change the wording of the law, because wording is coming from, in most cases, Carson,
Yeah.
right? And one individual is deciding the wording of law is kind of undemocratic. Travis.
I'm just not seeing why we couldn't do the same thing just with like the undecided option.
I
Like we
just think
could
it's good
have
for
like just vote undecided, then like in the
That
next
what
panel
makes
say,
doesn't make any difference. That's the problem. Travis, you're not understanding, or I'm not explaining properly. That let's is there anything you want to ban?
is there anything I want to ban?
uh,
Yes.
Give me an example, just one, please.
Um, like animal farming, I would want to ban.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Let's say you want to ban animal farming, and you said, who wants to ban the animal farming? I want to, so I would say yes. But the problem is, I don't want to do it by harming humans, saying, okay, those people now don't have jobs, they don't have money, they are deep inside the loans. So I want to discuss that part as well while voting. Otherwise, the only option I have is no, don't ban it, which is not my stand. You're getting it.
Yeah, but like let's say that you voted um let's say you vote with this like additional option that you're proposing. Like how would that count in the votes? Like what how would that like what would that count as?
So we can take a vote for those things, a quick vote. Does it make sense? If majority says yes, add this in the wording, we will add this. Otherwise, we'll just discard those words.
It could lead to better, longer discussion to try to iron out all the minor issues that people might have to try to square things up. So like having somebody say like having somebody instead of saying undecided, you could say like maybe but this, and then you could take the people who have similar concerns and have them talk, and then we could iron things out better that way instead of just having a broad range of undecideds and then having to break down in conversation why people are undecided and then extending the conversation by as much as we have to do that.
Exactly.
It would
Do
make
we
things
have
more
anything
concise.
else to talk about? Do we have anything else to talk about?
Not unless somebody has an, disagreements with anything anybody said specifically, like hard enough ones to try to argue them.
I
Otherwise,
have
I'm
a
gonna expect clean
I have a
solutions.
disagreement about organ part, but that will take a lot of study from my end, and I don't want to say anything incorrect. So I'll do more research and then we can talk about it.
Sure. What do you think, Travis?
Well, I'm still a bit unclear on your answer on the mice and snakes thing.
On the mice? What do you mean?
Like, I wasn't really sure what you were proposing as the morally relevant difference there.
I don't generally, I hold people at a higher moral standing and their suffering than I do the standing of mice, or just like I do of insects or rats or any other thing like that. Generally, I just view people in a higher moral, like putting the suffering of other people generally higher than I do of things of that nature. That's usually where I come from with that.
And by
I don't
people,
view
you would
mice
just mean
as the same as
humans.
people. Yeah, generally.
And well, when you say generally, like, are you saying that that's because of like humans just tend to have like certain traits, like humans tend to have higher mental capacities, humans tend to live longer, or like even if you equalize like all those traits, like the same mental capacity, same lifespan, same like intensity of suffering, like even if we equalized all those traits, would you still value the humans more?
No, because then that would break down for me a question of like personhood for those animals, because personhood doesn't just it's what personhood is and what being a person is are two different things to me. So like that would bring in another layer of moral consideration. But like generally I don't view mice in the same way as I do people. If we did equalize it and mice were just as intelligent as people and they had the same level of suffering and they have the same like mental acuity and everything like that. If they were just people but small, furry, and on four legs, that would lead to a different type of moral consideration, I suppose.
Well, I wasn't talking about having like the mice be the same intelligence as the average human. I was talking about having humans that are the same have the same intelligence as the average mice or the average mouse.
Mm. That is a different kind of moral thing for me because that falls into like the special allowances that you need to make for the care of people who are like that mentally disabled or mentally impaired. So that kind of falls into that way. Like I don't generally think that it's cool to like kill special ed people just because they're special ed. Like, you know,
Well, I guess I would ask like, why do we make these like allowances for them but not for animals, even if like all their
probably
traits
because
are equalized?
as a species we are more inclined to care for our own species more than we do others. I'm sure there's a lot
Um,
of psychology behind it.
well, would your answer just be because of species? Like, does it just boil down to, well, even if they have like the same mental capacity, the same lifespan, everything, like I would just care about the humans more just because of their species? Like, would you sign off on that personally?
Probably. I mean,
Like, would
that
you?
seems semi-accurate, I suppose. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but I don't really know how to put into words how I feel quite like when you say that.
I
So, I mean,
guess
in a
the
sense, if
yeah.
I want to simplify it, I suppose, but that's just because I don't view people in the same way as I view mice. It's just like it's empathy, right? It's the way that the human brain is built. We're built to be more empathetic to things that can emote like people do. That's why people like dogs so much, and very specific breeds of dogs. Because specific breeds of dogs, like Labradors, look like they have eyebrows, so they have more emotive faces. So we are more inclined to care and be more protective of those particular animals. Like it's just the way the human brain is built.
Um, I mean that may be true that we tend to favor like our own species over other species, but I would prefer to try and get rid of that bias. Like in the
I don't
same way we would
see.
try and get rid of our bias, like in favor of like our own race or our own sex or like anything like that.
Mm, the race and sex thing can be done with education because generally race is something that doesn't have a strong empirical bias. It's just like structures that are built in societies generally as a way to keep people oppressed. That's where most racial lines are drawn in countries, especially America. With sex lines, that's, well, sex is more genetic, gender is a little different, but those things can also be done with education. But I don't know about removing an ingrown bias towards other people because it's just the way like the mirror neurons in our brains work. As far as I'm aware, that's why most people don't hold animals to the same high standing that we hold animals of our own species. Because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what people are. We are, primates. We're through genealogy and evolution. We have found that we're actually technically old world monkeys. We didn't evolve from chimps. We evolved from something more akin to lemurs. But we don't view ourselves as part of the animal kingdom. So that might be part of the reason why people look at other people the way they do. But I think it's just special bias. Like baboons hunt monkeys with dogs. Like they do that in the forest. They don't really show the same empathy or consideration for the monkeys that they do for baboons, for other baboons. So maybe it's just because that's how we've evolved, is just to look at people in a different light than we do other animals. Being an omnivorous species, I'm sure that part of that evolutionarily was to make it a little easier mentally to continue having an omnivorous diet. You know, I'm no psychologist, but like that's just the theory that I have in my mind for that.
I mean, it might be the case that we have a stronger bias towards like our own species than we would have towards our own race or our own like sex, but I don't really think that would make it any more justified. Like I think like all of these biases are bad things that like ideally we wouldn't have. Like it might be harder to get rid of the species bias, like the sex bias or
I
the
don't know
race
that it even
bias.
be possible, really,
Well, I
Travis,
mean,
on like a
why I don't see why it wouldn't be possible.
it's
Travis.
deep set psychology. It's not the same as race or sex discrimination. It's special. It's a different thing. Go ahead,
Yeah, well,
brother.
I understand
Travis.
it's a different thing, but I don't see how it would be impossible to get rid of it. Yeah, yes. What is it?
Yeah, so Travis, I think we should not even get rid of the species bias. It's important. Humans are most important and most smart animals, I should say. So, taking care of each other is the only reason, and one of the most, or maybe one of the most important reason we survived this long. So, that
I
bias is
wouldn't
not
I
really a
wouldn't
bad
entirely
thing.
say it was.
Well, I would say
Sorry.
that like that bias
I
Mhm.
has led to like one of
I
the
would
worst atrocities in world history, so I would say it's a pretty
So,
bad thing.
so
I wouldn't go so far as to say that we're
Travis,
the smartest animals. I think that we're just the ones with the opposable thumbs who managed to build society. That doesn't necessarily mean we're the smartest. Like dolphins are
we are
still the more intelligent
smartest
ones.
because yeah, in that sense, yeah, the animals are of course smart in that
There
particular
could be some.
situation. But the point is, we soon will be interplanet species. That's something, and
Um,
even that's not the case. Let's say we are the dumbest species on Earth. Still, I don't see a problem with having a what's the word, bias towards our, having a positive bias towards our own species, because that helps each, that's just helping each other. Yeah, but I
Well,
love
it's
my
helping
mom, but I won't be
humans.
killing for her. Yeah,
Yeah, but you
so
could say that
I
about
love
like a
my mom,
sex
but I won't
bias
be
or a
killing
race
for
bias as
her.
well.
Yeah, those biases, race doesn't really exist, that's just we made up, so that's stupid. And sex and gender bias, that's something we need to work on.
Well, I don't see
yeah.
why we should work on that, but not the species bias.
Because
Because
those are more
species
immediate
bias
on
is not
the suffering.
necessarily a bad thing.
Okay, I don't see why like speciesism would be any more okay than sexism.
Okay, I can explain that. So just think
Ones
about it.
causing
Okay,
direct.
Travis, you want it? Sorry, Travis, not. What's your name, buddy? I'm always Eric. You take this one then, if you want.
Special bias isn't causing direct harm within society to other people, right? Like we need to fix how we treat each other. We need to make sure that people are properly taken care of. We need to make sure that empathetically speaking, we can set up a system to make sure that everybody's okay before we can start tackling the special bias that right now would not really benefit people as a whole. We have to make sure that we are okay. We have to make sure that we can live and that we can make sure that, if we have to go interplanetary, which I don't have a lot of faith in that one, despite what Elon Musk might tell people, that we are able to. If we removed the special bias and started looking at people the same way we look at other animals, that could have really, really negative consequences on the human species as a whole. It could work as a better justification for genocides or further oppression based on races and other things like that. There's a
Okay,
lot of
well,
negatives that can come from removing a special bias,
you'd have to
at least in the
demonstrate like
future
that
right
any
now.
negatives would outweigh the positives that would occur from it.
People don't have a problem with kill. Most people don't have a problem with killing cows for meat. If we started holding cows to the same moral standard that we hold people to, there would be a big subsection of people who think it's okay to kill other people just because they still don't have a problem with killing cows. There's a lot of things that
That might
could
actually happen.
hypothetically happen. Yeah, like if you got to remember, right? Like in the late 1800s, there was something called race science. And race science is where the idea of like race realism comes from, where people use faulty testing and extra and like cherry picked data to show that it's actually okay to oppress certain kinds of people because they're clearly a different species. Because look, they look different and they talk different and they have different levels of intelligence, but they don't look at the underlying reasons for why that intelligence difference exists and things like that. We've already seen what happens when you start splitting people up and calling them other species. What happens when we put ourselves on the same level? Like if we start looking at each other at the same level as we look at actual other species, what like that could be used as a justification for a lot of bad things. But I mean, we've never really tried to do that, so I don't know for certain. But just looking at how history has gone, that's how I would think of it. That's
Well,
the kind of worries that
I don't see any reason to think that like racism or sexism has led to
Travis,
worse
let me help you.
outcomes than speciesism.
Okay, Travis, let me help you.
the
Should a
Holocaust didn't
ban,
happen.
Travis?
Wait, the
Should
Holocaust
should
what?
No, the Holocaust happened. He cut me off. I was going to say the Holocaust didn't happen because of speciesism, even though some people did try to say that the Jews were a different species and that's why it was okay to kill them. Like speciesism isn't really causing that much harm, but like racism, things
It's
like that do. You
speciesism is
use for
causing
things
one of
like
the biggest
species.
holocausts in world history right now.
Yeah, people say that, but I don't
Travis?
really consider that the same. We're not doing it in the name of discrimination and killing off an entire religion for no reason other than because they think that religion is running the world behind the scenes. Like that's why I have such like a problem with that comparison and calling it a Holocaust when Holocaust is something that happened. And we know the reasons behind it, and they are not anywhere near similar to the reasons that people are eating meat.
I mean, it's true that in one circumstance we were trying to exterminate a group, and in this
That's what
circumstance we're not.
genocide always is.
Okay, well, I didn't call it a genocide. I called it a Holocaust.
Yes,
Nothing
and
about
what was the Holocaust?
Holocaust. I understand what the Holocaust is. I'm not saying it's the Holocaust. I'm saying it's a Holocaust.
Okay,
Um,
so
I mean,
how is
you
it that
can.
it's a Holocaust? No, it's not a genocide.
Well, I would consider genocide to be, like you said, an attempt at extermination. Um,
Mhm.
I don't think a Holocaust necessarily requires that. And if you're going to
Is
say that a
Holocaust
Holocaust
is
does,
Holocaust a standalone word, or is the Holocaust where that word came from? That's genuine curiosity. I don't remember for certain.
can you repeat the question?
I said, is Holocaust a word that already existed that like had its meaning before Hitler, or was that a word that was created around that time? like because
Well, I
of
mean,
that.
the word Holocaust existed before the Nazi Holocaust, but like
What
now we
is the
mostly
definition?
associate it with. I mean, if I'm
I
remembering
can Google
correctly, I
myself
think
and
the
I'm on
word
cell phone.
Holocaust actually originally referred to like the sacrifice of animals or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly.
Are you on mobile or are you on a computer?
Me, I'm on mobile.
I'm on mobile too, that's why I can't look it up. Oh, I've been
Travis,
considering getting like a cheap phone just to Google things while I'm in this because I can't afford a computer right now. Ah.
Yes. What is it?
yeah. So Travis, is it okay to kill a chicken and eat it?
No.
No.
At least not in
I,
typical
I
circumstances.
I would argue that in certain situations it's fine. It's perfectly fine because if you're dying or you are in desperate need of food, you can kill a chicken and eat it, but you can't do that with a human. Where
Okay,
do you
well,
think that
hold
law
up.
come from?
Are we talking about the law, or are we talking about like my moral views?
Even morality. I am not okay with one of my friend stuck on an island with another person trying to, and if my friend kills another human and eats it, I don't think I'll be able to keep that person as a friend anymore.
Yeah,
But
I
if
just
that
asked
person,
what's the morally relevant difference between the human and the chicken, such that it's okay to kill one
so
to
the
survive, but not the other.
difference is we are all animals, and I value humans more, not because they are smart or something, because I'm part of them. So I expect the same value, because if a person chooses the life of a chicken over my life, that's a problem. So we give what we want. This so I want all humans to respect all humans, little more than animals. Respect animals, of course, do that as much as possible. Don't destroy them, don't hurt them, whatever, everything. But when it comes to choosing that, okay, let's kill a human or a dog, it should not be a difficult question in any situation. That's
I
the
mean, you
difference.
do, yeah, but I don't really see the like
And that's
if
okay.
we
You might not say it today or
equalize
ever.
if we equalize all the morally relevant traits between the human and the dog, it would be a coin flip. There would be no reason to prefer one or the other.
If there's a situation, I'm talking about hypothetical. Let's not kill
Yeah, I'm
anyone.
saying like, are
I
they equal? Like, are the traits equalized, or are you talking about a typical human and a typical
since
animal?
okay,
Because there
let's
are
say
reasons to favor like the human that wouldn't have to do with species.
get your question. Can you repeat that?
Um,
Was that me or was that his audio?
wait, are
Sorry, can you
we?
repeat the last question? I didn't get it, Travis.
Oh well, I don't think I asked a question. I just said that
There's a delay.
like, well, I said that like there are reasons to prefer humans over animals. Like if you have a choice between helping one or the other, and you can only pick one, there's like reasons to favor helping the human over the animal that aren't based on species. So like speciesism doesn't
Because
necessarily I mean anti-speciesism doesn't necessarily require that you have to treat them the exact same in all cases. Like there would be other factors that you would look like. It's only if the other factors are all equalized and the only difference left is
okay,
species. Like there wouldn't be
Travis, Travis,
you wouldn't have a reason
gun
to
to your
favor one or
head,
the other.
Travis, Travis, gun
What?
to your head. Either shoot your pet dog or a human. What would you do?
Well, I don't. I would shoot the dog, but you do realize that doesn't entail
Exactly,
speciesism. But
exactly,
that
and
doesn't
that
make your case because
emotion
that doesn't
That,
entail
he,
speciesism.
that
Your
that does
argument.
that
Travis's
does
No, it does
to
not.
that
Travis's
does make
credit,
my
that
case
that
because
isn't
speciation is
that's not
natural.
good.
You don't have to develop that.
Okay, well, what is it?
You don't
It's
have to
natural.
develop
Why
that
would it
feeling.
be? Why would it matter if it's natural? That's just an appeal to nature. And
Sorry?
again, your position you're arguing for is speciesism. Like, so what you're saying is like getting me to say that. Like, I don't see how that makes your case because that's not a what I said doesn't entail speciesism.
So in that situation, if a person chooses to shoot a human instead of a dog, so that person there's something inherently wrong with that person.
What? There's
I
something
mean,
inherently
well,
wrong with a
Don't you
person.
agree?
hold on. Let's play a little devil's advocate, right? There are situations that could change that. It's like the trolley problem, right? Like on its face, the trolley problem is very simple: kill one person or five. But once you start changing the rules in the trolley problem, the mind changes. So like let's use this, right? If it's a dog and a person, you don't know either one of them, you're probably going to choose the dog. If that's your dog and somebody you don't know, you might choose that person. If it's your girlfriend and somebody else's dog, you'll choose that dog in a second. That's part of the reason that I had a problem with that particular framing was like it's too vague to really make a point against Travis. That's why he said
The
like
situation is
with all the
actually
manners
vague.
of
It
people.
is a vague situation. But the point is, we don't have to say or do anything against that. Other than that, it's natural. It exists in almost everyone, anyways.
Yeah, but I don't see why that is morally relevant. Like, do you think that just because we naturally have a bias towards other beings or like against other beings that makes that bias acceptable?
That bias is acceptable, and that is the only bias which is acceptable. I am not saying that if a person enjoys
Why
killing
is it
cats,
acceptable?
wait, let me finish. I'm not saying that if a person wants to kill cats for fun or any other animal and he's increasing harm, and that's okay. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, because that would be extreme, if whenever there is a choice, we humans should choose other humans. That's all what I'm saying, and that feeling is natural. But
Oh,
increasing this idea of speciation is bad is a makes no sense to me. I'm like, why this bias is not good? Don't you want
it's
other
not good
humans
for the
to take
same
care of
reason
you?
racism and sexism are not good.
Racism
It's not
and
the
so
same.
so you are giving the animals same moral value. I do give them moral value, but not the same. So that's the maybe basic difference. And most vegans do choose humans over animals. In most of them,
Okay, well, I think like when you say choose humans over animals, again, is this with like all the traits equalized, or is this just a typical human over a typical animal?
Well, if we're speaking
life of an
realistically,
animal and a finger of mine, I am saving my finger. That is the point.
Okay, I mean, I think that's ridiculous. Like, if you had to choose
you
between
think you
saving a
would rather
human with
cut
the
off your
same,
fingers and like handicapping yourself or killing an animal, you would choose to cut off your own finger.
I think he's saying it'd be more moral.
yeah, I mean, that's just that
I,
that seems
The
obvious. Like,
morality,
if
of course, the morality says, okay, let's save a life. But come on, I need all my fingers.
I'm keeping
if
my
you
fingers
had the
too.
choice
Hey, I gotta
between
stop.
saving an intellectually disabled human who's going to be murdered, with the same mental capacity as an animal, or like choosing to cut off your finger, it's obvious that having your finger cut off would be preferable than having an intellectually
No, in
disabled
that
human be
situation, I
killed.
would save a human. I would cut off
Yeah,
my
so what's
both
the
hands
morally relevant
without.
difference between them and the animal? It's just species.
Oh, I wouldn't. Vape have no way. Save your finger, man.
No,
I
for a
just don't
finger,
see how that's
I
any
am willing
different
to
than
give
saying
my
like, oh,
hand for a
what
human
is
life.
what is the
I am
what is the
absolutely willing
quality
to
of
do
life
that.
of the person in question?
Sorry.
What's the quality of life of the person in question who's being compared against my hands?
I'll have an awesome quality of life, and I'm talking about me only as an individual. If
No,
someone
Eric.
says
Eric
that
was
I'm
saying.
gonna keep my finger, it's fine.
Eric was saying if he's sacrificing his finger for a person that has the mental capacity of a cow or something, what's the life like of that person to decide if he wants to
Like
sacrifice
if
a
it
finger?
was, I have a
Okay,
cousin
that
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 I've
makes sense.
never like been able to meet because he has cystic fibrosis, If there was an option of him dying or me cutting off my finger, I'd probably keep my finger because living with cystic fibrosis is a hell. Like there's a lot of considerations that you could make in those
Okay,
types of
so I
situations.
consider
don't
that
really
as an
think
active member of society.
Hold on, I gotta
Okay,
I gotta pause you guys. I gotta pause you guys because I have another talk specifically on guns coming up in a minute and a half. It's this one specifically
Okay.
for people. So I gotta kick two of you out. I was gonna see Travis. Do you want to stay on for a gun talk?
Yeah, sure, I can stay
Okay.
on. But I would just say, like, there are multiple considerations, morally relevant considerations at play. Just species is not one of them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll set up a talk with you guys soon. Eric, I'm going to kick you to the curb, but I'll check back in with you because there's going to be a talk tomorrow about hate speech laws. So I'll get back to you, Eric.
All right.
All right. Later. Okay, Travis, I'm going to send this link. We're just going to keep this same link going for this next talk. And this is going to be on two things. So Jerem and Marcelo are coming in. And this is going to be on those two videos I had sent you of the cops shooting the guy that had the rock, and then the dad shooting the guy that was breaking in, the ex-boyfriend that was breaking in.
Did
And
you
then,
send me a video? I didn't know you sent me videos.
oh, I thought you responded to those. Okay, we'll watch the video live then.
Because I don't know, like, did you email it? Because I'm not in that Facebook group.
Yeah,
so-
I emailed it, but there's a lot of emails, so it might get lost.
Okay,
So
yeah, maybe let me see if you.
I
emailed
thought you
it.
had responded. Maybe I was thinking of somebody else.
Um.
It's all right though. Okay, then there's Jerem. Hello,
Okay, yeah, I
guys.
see you sent 2 videos on September 5th.
Yeah, it's all right. Here, I'm just gonna pull them up. Okay, so Marcelo.
I mean, I
and-
assumed when you sent that, I assumed that you were linking like some talk that you did with someone else about a topic.
Oh,
So
nope.
I didn't realize it was some other thing.
I think to figure out how we want certain laws and policing to work in our society, we have to watch some videos like security footage or body cam footage and stuff like that to decide what we think is acceptable or not acceptable. So we're gonna watch. Before we watch this video together, does anybody want to say anything before I put this up on the screen?
Just welcome, and yeah, I'm a huge defender of gun control and even the complete removal of guns in most cases, but
Oh, okay.
that's my stance.
Gotcha. Okay, let me pull this up. This video is 5 minutes, but I'm going to skip past the first 2 minutes. Jerem and Marcelo might have already seen it, but the first 2 minutes of this, Travis, is 911 calls about a guy walking around breaking car windows with a rock. And then what the video we're going to watch is what happens when the cops show up and find the guy. And then we're going to
Okay.
discuss what we think of it. Share. There we go. Let me move this down here, up here. Okay. And now I'll hit play. And yeah, we got about like 2 or 3 minutes.
Shattered.
Do you know what direction he went?
He just walked out in the parking lot. I think he was headed east. He's still in the parking lot.
He's still in the parking lot. Is he by himself?
Yeah. He's got a hat on. Yeah, he's by himself. He's got a beard.
Hey, drop the rock, man! Drop the rock! Hey, Phoenix Police, drop the rock! I'm gonna tase him. Drop the rock, buddy! Drop the rock! Drop the rock, then! Drop the rock!
Get back. Hey, get back here.
Hey, that guy's bothering me. I get it. Drop the rock.
Drop the rock.
Drop it. Drop the rock. I'm gonna tase him.
Hey, let's get the stun bag out. 221 India. We're gonna get stun bag out here. He's got a rock.
The man was further than the effective distance of the taser, so the same officer retrieved a stun bag an alternative, less lethal option. The man responded by running from the area on foot.
Did you load it? It's not loaded. Run northwest. Drop it! Drop it! Drop the rock!
The officer ordered the man to drop the rock, but the man again did not comply.
Sunbag, get that sunbag up. Drop the rock and get down on the ground.
The officer called for a stun bag again, but the man ran away before the stun bag could be used. The officer continued to order the man to stop and drop the rock. The man did not. The officer again asked a backup officer for the stun bag. The man temporarily went out of view behind the restaurant, but then reappeared in the restaurant's outdoor patio. The man then lifted the rock in what appears to be a throwing motion and continued to move towards the restaurant's side door.
Drop the rock!
The officer again asked a backup officer for the stun bag.
Sunbag on the south side of this. Now! Do not go in there! 223, 221 Indian, 998. At the suspect's down. I don't know if there's anybody inside who needs help.
The man fell inside the restaurant, and officers moved in to detain him and render aid.
Okay. I don't think the outcome matters for the last minute of describing. I think the guy makes it, but it doesn't affect things. So, Jerem, what are your thoughts on if this were to happen in our society? What elements of it do you think were acceptable or not acceptable, or?
So I think overall, the police officer was mostly in the right. One of the main aspects that makes me think that is like the guy knows that the cop has a gun, right? And he's like lifting up his arm to throw the rock. It's like if you're right, if you're willing to like do something like that with the knowledge that someone has a gun, like it seems like he may have like worse intentions going forward. And then him going into the restaurant or the building where there may be other people in there, especially since there's already a sort of like a history of him like causing disruption, like him breaking windows and throwing rocks and and it also seems like the cops didn't I could just be like reading in between the lines too much, but it looks like the cops didn't shoot to kill, more like they shot to stop him.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. Okay, Marcelo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think this is definitely overkill, right? Because while I understand that the guy was non-compliant, and I think there's an obvious element of mental health here, right? Because I don't think anybody would think that facing armed police forces with a rock is the standard encounter and the situation, right? So I think that in this case, it really shows that I believe police forces should be armed, right? Because there are instances in which absolutely guns must be used and lethal force must be used. I don't think that's one of those such cases, right? It's an obvious case of somebody that's unwell, has a rock, won't kill any cop throwing a rock at him, right? Just grab a ballistic shield and ram the guy. That's it, right? Or the beanbag, right? The stun gun that they were using since he was outside the taser range, right? Just shoot the guy immediately, right? 3 commands, right? You're not complying. You're seeing that this is obviously a case of somebody that's unwell. Just use the less than lethal force immediately instead of just letting it simmer. I think that it was way too long of a confrontation. they kind of allow this guy to leave this very open space in which there was no risk for anybody to move into the stores and then enter the place. That's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll have some challenges for you and some scenarios we can play out. But Travis, what are your initial thoughts?
Like on a lot of these sorts of issues, revolving around like police and criminal justice, I'm kind of undecided. I mean, in this circumstance, like you have someone who, like he was given a warning multiple times, and so he had like plenty of opportunities, but he kept doing it anyway. So I think I would say it's justified in this case.
Okay. Well, I'll have my first challenge be to Travis then. Let's say the cops showed up and they didn't have time to give a warning. Would you say that the warning aspect plays such a big role that this man that has been reported to break windows and maybe be dangerous, that has a rock and is entering a building that might have people in it, would you find it acceptable to shoot, or is it only acceptable after a warning?
I think it would be, I mean, if you're in a situation where you don't really have time to do that, I think it would probably be fine. But like the warning, I mean, it'd be preferable to like give a warning first if you have the time.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think the police, if we view police in our society as people that have this authority to protect and serve and all these various different things, then not listening to them is probably the biggest component to me here. I just like to challenge the edges and see like, what if we change this around? Okay, so let's move to Marcelo. I agree with a lot of what you were saying, and I didn't even think of the idea of the shield and then charging him, because my question was going to be to you: should the police officers be obligated to put their lives at an extreme risk of trying to tackle a guy that might have a gun or a knife, or even might be able to damage them by hitting them in the head with a rock? And then now that person has option of the person's gun. Should a police officer be obligated to tackle in this case if the shooting is not acceptable? Now, you bring up a great point of the shield, which is a huge part of that that Uvalde case that people talked about with the school shooting. And the problem was that they didn't have that equipment. So let's say that even though that would be best, in a case like this, where they're not close enough for the taser to work, and there was a malfunctioning with the beanbag shotgun thing, which I don't know much about that, but I agree with you. Both those should be used. And let's say that they happen to not have a shield. Let's say the people that usually have shields are likely like a SWAT team or whatever. Would you say that the police are obligated to take that risk of tackling the man?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it's a part of the job description, right? If you're engaged with working in police forces and etc., A, you should be trained. B, you should have all the necessary equipment, right? Especially the less than lethal one, because everybody can have a Glock or whatever else they use, right? It's pretty standard issue, but it's very important to have those extra additional things that will allow you to capture and neutralize people that are unwell, which unfortunately is becoming a bigger problem in our societies as a whole, all right? So yeah, but in a scenario in which those are not present, I think that it was pretty justified. The guy, he already had the information that this person was a bit unwell, right? The prior incidents and etc., but nothing violent. Apparently, there was no prior gun violence episode, so it was pretty safe to assume that it was just a crazy guy with a rock, right? So I think it would be okay for the cops to coordinate, pincer the guy, and try to tackle him. Yeah.
Okay, and then just to check a little variation, if it was a knife and the building he was going into had humans in it, like just families out. Okay, so knife, shoot, and I'm guessing if he had a gun, shoot, but rock, no shoot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, yeah. Especially even with a rock, right? I don't have such a big problem with the end, with the outcome of this, right? The problem for me was that he was allowed to get to that point by the police forces, right? By force of the command.
So the hope would be to tackle him before he even got to that point. But then if they weren't able to tackle him, since it was just a rock, then it's okay to let him go in the building, and then the police should follow him in the building and try to stop him there, tackle him there, try to stop him from hurting families. Okay.
Yeah.
Jerem, do you have any thoughts that you feel different now that you've heard Travis and Marcelo talk, or do you want to challenge anything Marcelo said?
I think my thoughts essentially remain the same. I guess I would like to make a comment on, like, should police should they be obligated to, like, risk their lives? And I think they should, but it just depends on, like, the effectiveness of the risk. Like, I don't think I guess with how far away the person was in like that current situation, I just think it was more effective to shoot him than to, like, yeah.
Now they kept their distance. Do you agree with Marcelo that if they're obligated to take that risk, should they have caught up with him before he ever got to that door and then tackled him, even if they were at risk?
I'm not sure. I also say, like, I think a rock actually can be pretty dangerous. It's like the kind of brings up, like, the situation with, like, Kyle Rittenhouse and the skateboard. It's like, it's just a skateboard, right? But no, like, a skateboard can cause a lot of damage, and I think, like, similarly, a rock can cause a lot of damage too. I don't think it's just, like, just because it's not typically a weapon doesn't mean it's not, like, has the effects of a weapon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. No, we had a talk yesterday, me, Phil, Matt, and Jeremy. And I think Jeremy and Matt were saying what Marcelo is saying here. And that was the idea that they should have to tackle, and then if they can't tackle him in time, then follow him into the building. Both myself and Phil were saying what Jeremy and Travis are saying, which is, he was ordered to do the thing. The cop shouldn't have to take that big of a risk. And then the shooting was fine. I'm going to let Jeffrey hop in here real quick. Hey, Jeffrey. So just so you know, the one I was going to have you on was the earlier talk, and this one's just a specific 4-person one. I'm going to let you respond to this if you know what we're talking about, but then I got to have you hop out of this one, and I'll get you on a different talk. Oh, are you able to hear us?
Hey, there we go.
Okay. Did you watch the video? Yeah, I can hear you. Did you? It's a little quiet, but did you watch the video on the police shooting the guy with the rock before he went into a building?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, obviously, the police department was extremely disorganized because the non-lethal option was asked for 10 to 20 times in video. Obviously, are we talking about, like, opinion from, like, a new community, or just simply opinion of the video overall?
Yeah, like, so if we're deciding in our community how our policing is going to work,
Okay.
and we watch this video, yeah.
Obviously, the picture was a colossal failure. The non-lethal option wasn't ready. And then the guy, well, one, if it was me and I had a gun, I'm not scared of a guy with a rock who's 20 feet away. You know? Did my sound go out?
Your sound did go out, but it came back in, so I'll let you keep going. But if it cuts out again, I'll probably boot you out of here. But
so
there's actually a talk I want to get you on tomorrow that I want to talk about. But okay, so you would charge him, but do you think anybody that accepts the job of what we'll call police officer should be obligated to charge him?
No, I don't think he should be obligated. Well, for one, he was, I don't know, rock isn't that scary. For two, he shot into a restaurant. For three, the non-lethal option wasn't ready. Like, that was a massive, colossal, like, bad video. There was nothing good about that video.
So my thought on the restaurant shooting element is the reason, if you can't tackle him in advance or do the taser or the various different things, then the reason you have to shoot him before he enters the restaurant is because if he enters it and you follow him in and then you do need to shoot, you're shooting in the direction of humans instead of the direction of the door. If he's about to smash a random citizen that's at a restaurant in the head with a rock, then a cop having to shoot him is so much more likely to hit other humans, waiters, and stuff in the restaurant, which is why if you see the risk of other humans, then that's why you have to take the risk out.
This happened in LA at a Trader Joe's. They were chasing a car. A guy was leaving, was trying to get, or what's it called? A high speed pursuit. He stopped. The guy ran into Trader Joe's. The cop shot at him and shot a lady who was a teller at the that was the market, the lady that worked there, and killed her, like in front of all these people, like killed her. It happened 2 years ago, babe? 2-3 years ago? Yeah. No, every cop should have a less than lethal option right off the bat. That was a terrible video. Like, there were so many things wrong with that video. A police, like in our society or in my society that has a police force that isn't run by the government, an independent company that was a free market company, would have far more professional a police force and a far more trained and with better options. I remember, like, in the 90s growing up, the cops had like the cops were forced to use all kinds of less than lethal stuff, even like stuff that like they had like a little robot that would launch out and fry the battery in a car. Like, they had all this stuff back in the day.
Well, I'm gonna pause you real quick because I'm having Jeremy work on a thing, and I think I'll have you do the same, where we come up with what is ideal for the cops to do first. But going over these videos is to find out what's acceptable, even if it's worst case scenario. So I think anybody would say they wish the beanbag shooter thing worked. They wish the taser worked. But the question would be, are those your only options? And if they fail, then you've failed and you have no other options. Or if those fail, then does the shooting become acceptable? I'm going to read a couple comments here because Jeremy has a question specifically to Jeffrey that I want everybody to answer. But before I read his, I want to read Contrarian 420, which says, what if he bashes the skull of a child inside the restaurant with the rock in his manic state? Oh, inside the restaurant. Yeah. Not, let's see. Now, the cop didn't shoot when he mimed throwing the rock, only when others were in danger. So it's pointing out that the cop was in danger of the guy. It's saying he was going to throw. Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, the guy is threatened to throw the rock at the cop. But myself, even though I think a rock can be dangerous, more so if you use it as a tool in your hand, if he's going to throw it, I don't think he should have been shot at that moment. But when he says he's going to go inside, that becomes complicated.
Personally, could have taken that guy out without a gun.
Yeah, but the question is, what should each person be obligated to do? I'm guessing there's a handful of cops that would risk their lives in wild ways, similar to firefighters. There's a handful that will do the most outrageous things ever, where most will probably do the bare minimum of trying to save people. And I don't mean that even in a bad way. I just mean they will put their lives on the line by having this profession in general, but they're not going to walk towards shooting bullets. But let me ask Jeremy's question real quick.
Okay.
Jeremy says, please ask Jeffrey whether police should be held to different standards from citizens with concealed carry under the same circumstances. So if the police should have been able to shoot this guy about to walk into the building with a rock, if the police weren't there and a citizen saw this guy smash windows and was about to go into the building, would the citizen with the concealed be able to shoot?
Be able to? So, okay,
legally,
like several times the Supreme Court has ruled that police are not obligated to protect you in any way.
No, it might have sounded. You might have heard that
wrong.
wrong. No. I'm saying if the police are able to shoot this guy walking in the building with a rock, should a citizen with a concealed carry weapon be able to shoot as well?
I would prefer the citizens do it.
Okay, so we're going to hop over to Travis now. Travis, you're in favor of the police shooting here. Would you say that a citizen should be able to do the same thing?
No.
Okay.
Why?
Well, I just think that generally speaking, we don't want to encourage, citizens to take the law into their own hands.
In with mass shootings, they've done studies on mass shootings, and mass shootings that are stopped by the public are stopped like 5 times faster than mass shootings that are stopped by police. So if the public is able to deal with these things faster, why would you not want them to deal with them? Like, police aren't very trained. You know that, right? Like.
Well, in our society, we can
person
train
is
police
actually
however
trained
we want.
more recent than a police officer.
Yeah, in our society, we can train police however we want. So the question is, do we
Yeah,
want
but
to
they aren't trained. They aren't
the
trained
question
very
is,
well.
do we want to train them well, or do we want to allow citizens to work as them? And which is a fine option to have. Jerem, what are your thoughts?
I'm not quite sure. I think it would largely depend on the culture. So like if we live in a culture that kind of encourages like, we don't want to incentivize like citizens shooting at the wrong times.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have to like encourage like training and have like a culture that's like goes to less lethal forces at the start, right? I think a kind of a good example is in the second video we'll watch. I think a lot of that has to do with the gun culture.
Yeah. Let me throw out my thoughts, and you can let me know if you. Well, hold on, real quick. I just want to throw out my thoughts to see if Jerem agrees, and then Jeffrey, you can counter my thoughts as well. But so I agree with what Jeffrey's saying. Where if there's a mass shooting, somebody's just shooting people, and you have a gun, you should shoot that person. Yeah. But if you see a person like Kyle Rittenhouse that happens to just have a gun and you think they're dangerous, you shouldn't be able to shoot them. And same thing where if somebody's going to enter a building with a rock, or if they have like a knife on their belt or whatever, you shouldn't shoot them just because you think they might be a threat. I think the only time a citizen should do something like that is if they have such strong reasoning that they're seeing an actual attack in place. And a lot of times you wouldn't even know. You could see 2 people fighting and somebody has a knife and they're about to stab the other person, but they're the ones just defending themselves against a random person attacking them. So
recently a friend of mine stopped a mass shooter in what was it, Wisconsin. He stopped a guy with an AR-15. He was a concealed carry permit holder, shot a guy with an AR-15, went and grabbed the AR-15 from him, and the cops showed up and shot him. So yeah, training. I have a concealed carry permit in 30 states in the union, and when we're trained for the concealed carry permit, it's a lot of training, and we most definitely do training that is when is the right time to shoot training. So if someone is able to carry in public, they're most likely more trained than the police. The police have a very minimal training to get once a year they have to shoot a target, and that's
again
it.
we can decide if we want to train our police or just not have police or whatever in our society. But yeah, cool. Okay, Marcelo, I wanted to bring the same question to you, but compare it to what you found acceptable. So you were saying the police should be able to shoot if it was a knife or a gun. To answer Jeremy/Jeff's question, Marcelo, do you think that if let's say you were a concealed carry person, you had a gun on you, you're not a police officer, and you just see somebody that happens to have a gun. You don't know what threat they are or not a threat. Would you say that if the police officer was to say, stop, don't go in that building, you have a gun, I need to talk to you, and if they keep walking, the cop can shoot them, would you, Marcelo, be able to do the same thing and find that acceptable to shoot a person because they have a gun and they don't listen to you?
Yeah, it's a pretty big hypothetical for me, right? Because I wouldn't have a gun in the first place, period. Mm-hmm. And if things were my way, neither would the guy, right? It would be a rock versus shoulder kind of scenario, right? And I would definitely tackle the guy. It doesn't matter if he breaks my head with a rock and etc. I would tackle the guy. But again, I don't live in the clouds, right? I want innocent people to be protected, right? I think the problem here is that I do think that this guy is also an innocent in this interaction here, because it's a case of mental health. The guy was not a criminal. He was not out to kill people and etc. Right? He was just having some sort of episode and etc. And I don't want that guy to die. Period. Right? And again, I come from a very non-United States position. Right? I live abroad. I'm not an American. I've been to the United States several times and etc. But what I see, for instance, now I'm currently living in Spain. What would the police do in such a scenario? They wouldn't just chase the guy from one direction. They would immediately put 2 or 3 guys on different positions to pin the guy where the guy is. They wouldn't just come from one direction. They would come and triangulate, right, and pincer the guy, isolate him in this very open space to force a confrontation, force the guy to either let the rock go or then to use less than lethal force. Because if you have 3 guys with tasers from different angles, you will be able to get close to use a taser. If you're coming from a single direction, you won't, right? Everybody will be kept at a distance, right? So in this case, the less than lethal approach makes no sense, right? But yeah, in a case where there's obvious threat to a child, to an innocent, and etc., it's okay to shoot the person. I have no problem with that. I just want those scenarios to be extremely rare, as they should be in real life.
Gotcha. Okay. Before we hop to the next topic, I'm going to kick Jeffrey out of here. So Jeffrey, do you have any last thoughts you want to say
Nope.
on this video? Okay, Jeffrey, I'll get in contact with you to set up our next talk.
Okay, cool.
All right. Take care, my friend. All right. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. I was going to read... Police. Okay, Philip says police rule: once an officer draws his sidearm, he has to draw blood before holstering it again. Wait. Okay, he was joking. I thought there was something serious there, but I didn't read it in advance. Okay. Let's go to. Well, does anybody have any thoughts after hearing what each other have said? Different thoughts on the topic.
I mean, I would just mention that I would think it having like the majority of citizens be armed is actually probably a good thing, but it's only good like sort of contingent on having that like concealed carry education and having a good culture that incentivizes like responsible gun ownership and not like becoming heroes and shooting when you're not supposed to. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I think we mostly agree to some extent. This is an interesting case, and that's why I picked this one, is because it's just a rock, and the police didn't know what he did in advance. We don't know if there's people in the building. So even in the cases where Marcelo might disagree that saying that they should not have been allowed to shoot, he is saying that if it was slightly different, a knife instead of a rock, then the shooting's okay. And so I think we have enough to go off of to kind of write up how we would want the police to interact with this kind of situation. Jeremy had some very interesting thoughts, and good, I think, that whenever we see videos like this, the police instantly are yelling, and he thinks that maybe, especially when it comes to mental health stuff, if they're like having a calmer approach and saying, hey, what's going on? Can we help you? that it might make the person not scared. And so that kind of thing will be interesting to write up what we think would be best for a police manual. But we do have to decide worst case scenarios, what's acceptable, what's not. It seems like in the U.S., Derek Chauvin putting his knee on George Floyd's neck for as long as he did while George Floyd was in handcuffs is thought of as that is too much. We cannot do that. And so in our society, we can decide, what does the manual say? In what cases is it clear that it's always too much in this case? If somebody's hands are both above their head, no weapons, is it always wrong to shoot that person? That kind of thing. So, yeah, we will break these things down and it'll be great. I'm going to go to the next video, and this, well, you'll see what it is. Let's see, share screen. Ring camera footage.
Much easier when you've got a place for everyone to convene. And
stop it, Allie. Boys, in the house. I'm doing it. Wait. He's leaving. Hey, he's coming back. Nope, I'm calling. James, she doesn't want to talk to you.
I'm going to pause it real quick because Travis fell out of here, and I think Travis is the only one that hadn't seen it before, which is a big part of why we're watching it. So I'm hoping Travis hops right back in here. I'm just going to give him a few seconds, and then if not, we'll get back to it. Jeremy says that he watched the police interview with the dad and the daughter in this case, and he says no matter what, don't let a cop interview you inside a room without a lawyer. So if you guys are ever in that situation, don't let it happen. Okay. Oh, I wish Travis would show up because. Okay. Well, if he shows back up, we'll just scan back and show him it. But I'll just hit play and we'll just watch about a minute. We probably won't watch the end part, but here we go. All right, so I'm just going to stop it there, and then I'll have it prepared to show Travis that 30 seconds because the rest kind of doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it kind of could matter if he dies or doesn't die or whatever. But yeah, let's start with Marcelo. What do you think of this?
Does the guy die? I've watched this.
He does die.
He does die. Yeah. Yet again, it's for me. It's a clear case of people mentally unwell, right? Mm-hmm. This is trickier for me, right? Because I'm a father, I have a girl, and etc. And I know that most of my moral dilemmas would vanish very quickly were my daughter ever come into contact with danger. But I don't think it's justified, even that, right? This scrawny guy trying to talk to your girl and etc. This guy needs a mental hospital or something like that, not to be shot. Especially because, again, there was no warning shot. The guy was shot to kill, right? You can see the first shot goes in the chest area and etc. There was no warning shot, no shooting on the side, and etc. to scare the guy away. That I would think it's absolutely justified. But to basically just go 3-round bullet in the guy's vitals, I don't know. I really can't justify that. The guy was crazy, right? He was having some sort of episode. Do we need to kill everybody that has poor mental health and goes into some sort of mania? I think that's the underlying question. And I think that we should only kill those people if they are really in an in extremis kind of situation.
Yeah. Okay. I have a handful of thoughts to that, but I'm curious to hear Jerem's first. What are your thoughts of what Marcelo said or just the video?
Well, I mean, so I'll mention that the more I watch this video, the more I sort of err on the side that this is extremely excessive and he should not have shot. And where like the first video can be a little bit more gray, I think this one's pretty clear cut that like the shooting is just unjustified. Like the guy had no weapons. It seems like his intention was just to talk, right? Like I don't like. It's like you hear the mom or say like she doesn't want to talk to you, right? Like I think he's just some heartbroken person that just wants to talk, you know, maybe argue or something. Like it doesn't look like he like broke the door or anything. He was just, you know, he was trying to, but you know, I don't think with his like physique, I don't think he'd even be able to. Like I think the right thing to do would just be to call the cops and wait for them, right? And even then, right? Marcel brought a good like point with the like a warning shot. Like when he shot to kill, right? This is extremely excessive for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So I have a few thoughts. And I keep hearing new things as I'm watching. So for one, I don't think it's fair to assume there's not a weapon just because we can find out afterwards there's no weapon, which I don't even know if we found that out. So we could assume there's a weapon or not. That I don't know if that part really matters. But this person, obviously, I agree, is mentally unwell, but they're willing to try to break into a house because of a girlfriend situation and aren't even listening to the parents saying no and it's locked and he's trying to break the door down. Honestly, the likelihood is the dad could probably overpower this guy, take him down to the ground, call the police. But assuming the possibility that he couldn't do that, what is this guy going to do? Like, this guy's willing to break a door down because of a romance. Like, you hear about things here and there where like somebody will kill somebody and then commit suicide because of some kind of romance thing. I don't know if this would be the case with this guy, but it'd be hard to put anything past somebody that's that mentally deranged. Now, I would prefer him to get help, obviously. I'm not saying he should be shot because he's mentally deranged. But not only is he willing to break this door down, but you hear the dad say, "Get away, I have a gun." So I don't know if there's a difference between loudly announcing you have a gun and giving a warning shot, or if both are needed. But I don't know if legally somebody should be obligated to announce they have a gun before they shoot, but I think it definitely plays a factor. So that one's interesting to me. And my instinct is to think that it's excessive to shoot him so many times and to shoot as he's walking away. But my concern, I have two concerns. So one reason to continue shooting when somebody walks away would be in a hypothetical where somebody has a gun. Maybe it's an AK and it's a crazy gun or whatever. If they're coming at you and you shoot at them and then they're walking away, them walking away doesn't mean anything. If there is reason to shoot, then them walking away could mean they're just hiding around the corner to come back and get you. That's not the case with this guy, but I just don't think walking away always means anything. The reason that it's hard to really judge shooting 3 times is most people I mean, I would assume most humans have stress levels that make you do wonky things. So if you get to the level where you feel like your daughter's life and your own life is in danger, that guy was probably, his adrenaline was going nuts by the time he was willing to shoot when that door was about to be broken down, to where like you might just shoot a couple more times. And I would just hate to put this dad in jail for a certain amount of his life, because his adrenaline went nuts after he did something potentially reasonable. But again, we don't want to let people get away with adrenaline making bad choices. But that's just kind of my defense idea that pops into my head. What do you guys think of all that rambling I just did?
Yeah. It's not a clear-cut case, even for myself, right? I think I would be more inclined to shoot in this case than in the first one, strangely enough, right? Because, yeah, you're going into somebody's house and etc. You're obviously very motivated. Let's just say that, which is a problem. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that we don't know if this person is armed. It's fair enough, especially in the United States where everybody has a gun, right? But I think it's this mindset. We are going, in my opinion, we are going towards the problem from the other side. We are already assuming that guns are everywhere. Everybody has a gun. You should be afraid of guns and etc. I would go the other way around, right? You have much less guns around, and then you legislate towards the fringe cases, the exceptions and etc. Farmer or something like that. I think that the biggest thing here for me is that the dad apparently shot the guy through the door, right? He basically just went out, right? Trigger happy. And somebody, I think it was Jeremy, mentioning that warning shot can potentially kill any bystander and etc. Yeah, so this guy could, all right, because he was not looking at anybody, right? He was not checking if there was a crowd around, if there was somebody else behind the guy and etc. He just went out. And what's the difference? I see no difference, right? So I think it's perfectly justified in this case. They had the camera, so they knew that, hey, I'm going to shoot upwards, all right, through the door and etc. Most likely the bullet won't go anywhere, and it's going to be something a bit more of a deterrent, right? And even then, if this guy continues to march on and etc., hunker yourself down through one more door. The guy still keeps going on after hearing a warning shot, after you retreating yourself into more security, then I think it's absolutely justified to shoot, right? Because this guy is up to no good for sure. It's not just a case of a maniac episode. Yeah.
Okay. So if it could be announced what's acceptable or not acceptable with self-defense in situations like this, what would... Obviously, if somebody didn't know, then it would be hard to judge them. But let's say that every single citizen in the society knows exactly what's in law. Would you want it to be illegal to shoot through a door at somebody threatening to break in with a potential harm?
I would say I would, just to be consistent, okay. Right? But I would imagine there would be a number of complications.
Okay, and so so in this case, obviously this guy views it as acceptable. I view it as acceptable, but in a society where it's not, if you were making the law and he knew it was not acceptable, what would you want a punishment for him killing that boy? I guess it was a man he probably killed, but young man.
I don't see that as like a completely intentional killing. Right? The father wasn't going out and woke up that day and said, "Yeah, I'm going to kill somebody." Mm-hmm. So it's super hard to say, but definitely not the usual felony killing kind of time. A few years, right? Just to maybe 5 years tops. Because, yeah, I don't think it was 100% intentional. The father was also under a lot of stress, trying to protect his family. Yeah, I think that in a society without guns, the boy would be still alive. Everybody would be alive and well and out. And ideally, this boy would be interned and finding the help that he needs. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, Jerem, would you say that it should be acceptable if somebody is trying to break into your house to kill them if you feel a threat? And if not, then if somebody's trying to break into your house and you warn them to stop and then they do not, is it acceptable to kill them in both those cases?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on some context, but for the most part, yeah. If you feel like my main issue with the video is like I don't think he was much of a threat, but yeah, if there is a threat there, then yeah, I think it should be legal for sure.
Okay, would it have to be a witness threat? So like, would there be enough cases that could happen where it seems like there's not a threat, but the person has a knife or a bottle of acid or a gun on them, that it would become at the discretion of the house owner? Or would it always have to be a visible threat, like you would have to see the weapon and the breaking in?
I think it would have to be at the discretion of like a jury and like the court system, because
Well,
a lot of times people are
I mean, for allowing the citizens to do it. So if our society, let's say you were deciding what you wanted to allow the citizens of our society, would you want the citizens to know that if somebody's breaking into their house and they say stop and the person doesn't stop, that they can only shoot that person if they are holding a weapon? Or would you want them to know that it can be at their own discretion if somebody's breaking in and they assume they have a weapon, they could kill them?
Well, so how far? So sure, at their own discretion, but also with the knowledge that, like a jury could say that their own discretion was wrong. I think they should. I think both of those can be true. Yeah.
Gotcha. I just think it's good for citizens to know what they are allowed to do, and then when it comes to like police, to know what their limits are of what they're not allowed to do, and different things like that. So yeah, Phil says. Phil was part of a talk we had on guns yesterday, but the first 2 hours of a 3-hour talk ended up not being on guns. So he said we didn't get to this video, but in his mind, it's clearly excessive. The father is just taking a chance to murder this ex-boyfriend he doesn't like. And I think Phil's being serious here. It's possible.
Yeah. It is possible. Yeah.
Just because something's possible, I don't think we should base something on that possibility. But yeah, it's complicated. But yeah, which is why we just have to have a range of what we consider acceptable. We could even have that range be that it's never acceptable to kill somebody coming onto your property. You always have to wait for the police, or you have to try to do it with your hands, not with a knife or a gun or whatever. We can decide that because we can each have our own opinions on how things should be. And then in this case, we're building a society, so we can decide that as well. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have another like 20 minutes, but we've been going at it about 50 minutes, and I have a couple other topics I think would be interesting to bring up. So
I have about 10 minutes.
10? Okay.
15, 10, 15. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So let's start with Jerem for answering this question. But I've been talking with Phil, and we were talking about the idea of looking at the Constitution and deciding what things we think we'd want to change or whatever. So with the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, form a militia, people defend themselves against the government, or just having guns to protect oneself. How would you view how this should be done in our society we're creating? Should there be limitations on guns? Just kind of a generic couple-minute thing.
Yeah. I think currently I'm pretty generally pro-gun. Maybe some restrictions here and there, but I think for the most part, every citizen should have a right to have a gun. And I guess to give sort of an example of why I think that would be, so in this case, like imagine in like the second video, imagine the guy did have a gun, right? And he's like pounding the door with his gun trying to get in, but then inside the father doesn't have a gun, right? like there's like the government came in and stole or took his gun from him because like there's some new law that passed that like says, you know, if, I don't know, for whatever reason this guy can't have a gun.
Or just say nobody can have guns, but the ex-boyfriend coming in got it off the black market or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like essentially what we have going on is like, in my view, in that situation, the government is actually like an accomplice to a crime. Like, the government is now like a criminal. Like, there's like the government's now responsible. If that guy goes inside and kills somebody, the government's now like responsible for the death of that person. So I just think like overall having a right to self-defense is pretty like utility generating. So
Gotcha. All right, Marcelo, what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, I know you prefer there to be no guns and that to be how the society could get along that way, but what would you allow as far as from the government? What would you want people to have the rights to with guns?
Yeah, I think there are certain jobs and circumstances that warrant people being armed, right? If you live in a big rural property, right? If you hunt there and if you're generally like more than half an hour away from the police, I give those people much more leeway, right? I've been, I think I've discussed this with you some time ago. I've been through a situation in which I had people shooting at me. I was in the middle of nowhere without an access to a phone and etc. They were hunters poaching illegally in my property and etc. I had a brilliant idea of firing a warning shot, and then they decided that I was game. So in this case, I think that, hey, it is justified. People working with security forces, they should be able to have a gun even outside their working hours, right? Because it makes sense, right? They are under more scrutiny. They might be something held against them by criminals and etc. So they deserve an extra layer of security due to what they do. But for the most part, I think that we should make gun ownership extremely limited, because I see this all around the world, right? A reduction in guns around leads to less mass shootings, less in situations like the boy and stuff like that. And then we would only have to deal with the cases of police mishandling, lethal use, all right, which is much more preferable in my opinion, right? Yeah.
Okay. Would guns for like hunting be out?
No, I don't think so. I think it's okay to have a gun to hunt under certain circumstances also, right? So if you live in the middle of nowhere, or maybe like, again, using a very non-US approach, right? If you're part of an indigenous tribe in Brazil, right, where it is something that they do, right? They hunt as a cultural aspect of their culture. And
what's
an
example of a type of person or group of people that would not be legally allowed to have a gun in your mind?
The average city dweller. Right?
Okay, but if one of those average city dwellers wanted to go hunt, would they have to go to the government and say, "Hey, I want to get a gun to hunt. Can I do this?" And then you would have my name on file, and then I have a gun? Or okay, so it wouldn't have to be a certain type of tribal person or somebody living out in the wild or anything. Okay.
I think it should be okay if somebody. I don't like hunting. All right, just to be very clear here, I think it's stupid to hunt in the 20th century outside of very cultural or isolated situations, right? But
yeah,
if it is to be allowed, right, and there could be a discussion about that, then we would need a system, right, in which probably you would be able to hunt in a very specific place during specific times of the year, not to endanger endangered species and something like that. And then ideally you would be able to rent guns, right? Okay, you're going into this weekend trip. Here is your rifle. You're already passed all the checks. You're somebody that hasn't had a history of mental health and etc. You will deliver this gun here back at 3:00 Sunday, or else you get a warrant looking for it, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I like it. Okay. Marcelo only has a couple minutes. So, Jerem, do you want to respond to anything he just said?
I think I'm okay. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So at this point, we haven't allowed or outlawed any guns in our society. The only gun law we voted on was the 10 rounds. Do we want to outlaw any clip/magazine that has 10 or more rounds? And that did not get passed. So we did not outlaw that. Do either of you have any ideas on an individual law that should maybe go into place? Like, so Jerem, in your case, where you're more pro guns, can you think of something like waiting periods or something that you do think should be a regulation about guns? And then Marcelo, is there something else that you think likely would get passed, even though 10 rounds didn't get passed, that you think should be something that we put up for a law proposal?
Right. Well, I find it really hard to understand why would anybody, even for self-defense, would need anything more than like a handgun in the clip. I find it extremely hard to understand that. Yeah, I need an AR-15. I need a .50 caliber, armor piercing, point hollow. Come on, right? This is absurd. I would be much more lax with like, okay, this person was caught with a handgun and 6 guns as if a revolver or whatever a Glock fits, all right? But yeah, I think that anything that's automatic or even the semi-automatic long guns are just for hunting and usually bolt action, right? Because that's why you want to hunt, right?
Okay.
To have the thrill of the kill, skill, and etc., not just to full auto a deer or something like that.
Okay, and so we could put AR-15s and other semi-automatic rifles like them to a vote. Would you say the same for handguns, though? Because I think a lot of handguns are, like in the U.S., there's a lot of places where you have to be 21 to get a handgun, but you only have to be 18 to get a rifle because more deaths are caused by handguns, and a lot of handguns are semi-automatic, so the clips will have like 18 bullets. And it's for anybody that doesn't know, automatic means you pull the trigger once and it's just bullet, 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 bullet. Semi-automatic means every pull is a bullet. So every second, but you still have to pull it. So do you think that I should have AR-15 specifically put to a vote? Or would you say any semi-automatic, including handguns, that would be 18 bullets that could be shot in 18 seconds?
I would say the second option. Definitely.
Okay. Semi-automatic. Okay. And then, Jerem, do you think there should be like a waiting period, or do you think there's a different thing that's more important than a waiting period?
For like buying a gun?
Yeah.
Or
Can you think of a regulation? Should everybody have to get a license like you do when you get a car? Any regulation you think we should put a vote on?
The two things that I think would be good, and one of them, I don't know if you could vote on it, but so like number one is just you should have to register. Like each gun should, just like similar to cars, each gun should be registered to somebody. So like anybody can have a gun, right? But it needs to be registered so we can like kind of keep track of, you know. And then the other thing is just education. So like you should probably like have a concealed carry permit if you want to conceal carry.
Okay.
So those are the two things. Yeah, concealed carry permit and then register. Yeah.
Do you think there should be a waiting period of any kind that is forced for every single citizen? Like, should everybody have to wait 24 hours? Or do you think there's cases where if somebody feels their life is threatened because somebody literally threatened their life and they want to get a gun immediately, are there any cases that somebody shouldn't have to wait at least 24 hours?
I mean, I have to chew on it, but I don't. I think probably most cases I don't think we really need a waiting period.
Okay.
Sounds
good. Cool. I'll just throw out my thoughts real quick. My only thoughts on the waiting period is the amount of people that die from like crimes of passion. Somebody catches their wife cheating on them, so they go to the store, buy a gun, and they kill their wife and the guy that cheated. Or suicides, where if somebody wants to kill themselves, they go down, buy a gun, kill themselves. If they have to wait 3 days, they're going to think, oh man, I want to kill my partner and the person that helped them cheat on me. But now that I thought about it, I don't want to spend my life in jail, so I'm not going to do it. Or somebody that was severely depressed that wanted to kill themselves, if they have to wait 3 days to get that gun and then they get reminded that they care about life or something like that. I would want to base it on stats. I would want to see if there's no waiting period, how many deaths happen within less than 24 hours of somebody buying a gun and then committing a crime versus if you put that waiting period in place where they have to wait a day or 3 days or something, and then you see if gun deaths like decline. I wouldn't want to put a law in place for no reason. If it turns out that nobody goes and buys a gun and shoots somebody automatically, then I wouldn't want to make somebody that's afraid for their life not be able to get a gun right away. So, Marcelo, you look like you have a thought.
Yeah, must get out of here soon, but I think that certainly some sort of grace period in which there's a certain cooldown period would be a good deterrent in many crimes of passion and etc. Because I find it funny, for instance, here in Spain, right? Any death makes the headlines here, right? And it's a huge deal. It goes into all newspapers and etc. because it is so uncommon to see people killing each other here. And 80% of the time, the killings here are cheated husband or killing wife or killing his ex-wife for whatever reason. Usually not with a handgun. Like in 90% of the cases, the guy just ambushes and get a knife or something like that. And the 20%, which is usually gun-related, is like drug dealing, right? The drug dealer killing drug dealer, right? Man, I frankly don't have a lot of much to say about that. So we need a society with less guns and less propensity to shoot and kill to make those interactions more meaningful. To make sure that we get that, we need to cover a lot of other things first, right? Mental health being one of the first ones. I think this is a major cause of gun death in the United States, all right? And the United States has so many specific kinds of violence that are present nowhere else in the world, all right? And there must be a reason for that. And we must attack those reasons. I think laws should go from the wider to the narrower, not the other way around. We legislate for the most people, and then we fine-tune for the fringe cases, right? So what you were saying makes sense. That's what I think.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, I better let you get going. But
Thank
it was
you.
great talking. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers. Okay, yeah.
All right.
See you, Carson, and thanks, Jaron.
Yep. I'll see you later. Okay, Jerem, I'll let you get going here too, but Jeremy wanted to know if you've read or seen Michael Huemer on different ways someone can assist a criminal by interfering with the victim's ability to defend themselves. That doesn't sound like a title, but are you familiar with his thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, so I watched one video months back from Michael Huemer, and that's sort of where I got my take from, as I kind of stole it from Huemer because I think it's a good one about the government being an accomplice to a crime. So I think that's why Jeremy brought that up, is because it comes from Michael Huemer.
Oh, gotcha.
Or I don't know
Cool.
if it comes from Michael Huemer, but it's a
That's where you
it's
heard it.
something that it's something that he
That's cool. I really like Michael Huemer. I'm hoping he responds to my email so I can talk to him. He's kind of a hard guy to get a hold of, but it seems like he does a handful of interviews, so I'm hoping to chat with him soon.
he's actually he talked with Matthew 2 or 3 times. So
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched all those talks they had before I talked to Matthew. Okay. Philip just made a comment on, let's see, that there were no warning shots and whatnot. I just want to point out, I think it's complicated. Again, I think well, he said he didn't even wait for the door to get knocked down. In different situations, like if you saw a couple guys that were trying to break in and you told them not to, and let's say you saw a weapon, you probably wouldn't want to wait till the door gets knocked down and hope you get them before they get to you. Not that I'm saying it's okay here. I'm kind of just I'm always playing devil's advocate on any topic. But yeah, if it's justified, which I think it probably is. Now, I don't think that, I wish this kid didn't die. And I say kid, but he's probably 18. I can call 18-year-olds kids though. I wish he didn't die. I hope he could have gotten help if he could have gotten help. But how determined he was to get in there to whatever he was going to do with his girlfriend. I wonder what would have happened if there were police outside. If the police were just right there and he was trying to break the door down and they held a gun up and said, stop, like you need to stop trying to break that door down. If he didn't stop, it probably would have been like the other video we saw where he would have got shot. I'm wondering if he had the mental capacity to stop or if he was just full rage. Yeah.
So I actually have some amount of personal experience with like a similar situation. So years ago, I was with my friend, and she had recently gone through a breakup. So she was emotional and everything, and we were drinking, and she decided that she wanted to go and tell her mind to her ex or whatever, like she wanted some closure or whatever. So she in a lot of ways she was actually the same person in the video, right, trying to knock the door down. And she had such like a laser focus, like I just want to tell him what I think, right? So yeah, in a lot of cases I don't think, because like her intentions weren't like I'm gonna kill this person. It was just I just want to argue, right? I just want to let off some steam, maybe yell a little bit, right? So I don't think we can.
I just feel like where it becomes different is when they try to physically enter. I think that's where the danger comes in, because a petite woman could have a knife or a gun. Somebody the size of The Rock could not have a knife or a gun. But I think the problem, no matter how chaotic people are or drunk people are, they're banging on the door. It's probably not acceptable to shoot them. As soon as they are trying to break the door down, that's where I don't know if anything else matters. So if this ex-girlfriend of yours was just banging on the door and yelling to you, let me in, I want closure, I need to talk to you, whatever, I don't think there's any level of anything that would make it okay for you to shoot her until she takes a rock and is breaking your windows in and trying to climb through your window. Because then you wonder, oh my gosh, she's so mad that we broke up that she's going to shoot me. So,
Gotcha. So it would kind of just depend on how, like, knocking on the door, pounding on the door versus like breaking a window or like, okay.
That's off the top of my head. I could be convinced otherwise because I haven't really thought about the topic much.
Yeah, and I think in that video, there's I think like the chances of him actually breaking in were pretty low.
Yeah, that could be. I remember hearing when he was like slamming his body against the door, I heard like a crack that sounded like the door was starting to budge. But that's a fair point. I mean, morally, if he didn't have a chance getting through that door, I would say the person that shot him is bad. That's not good. But as far as what's acceptable, I think right now, and what I will probably send out to get people to vote on is, if somebody is clearly visually trying to break into your house, are you allowed to shoot them? And I think in probably any case that's acceptable. Even if they're just breaking in to like steal your stuff, should an owner of a house have to take a risk of an intruder coming in whatsoever? And I don't think they should. Now, if somebody was stealing an Amazon package off your porch, I don't think you should be able to shoot them. Film them, call the cops, whatever. Maybe you should even have the right to be able to try to stop them, but not shoot. But I would say in just about any case, if somebody's actually trying to enter your house, there might be many cases where it's morally wrong, but should be legally acceptable.
Maybe that's a I'd have to chew on that, but I could see that being true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, any other thoughts on guns, just real quick before we hop out of here?
I think just the overall point is that it's important that citizens have the right to have guns, but that's also contingent on the education and the culture surrounding it. I think like kind of what Phil was bringing up. I think it's very possible that the dad was like looking for this opportunity. You know, like he was like almost excited to finally use his gun. Have his hero moment. I think that is very unhealthy.
Definitely.
And we should, I guess, try and find ways to change the gun culture.
Yeah, definitely. Well, something to ponder is just thoughts on the Second Amendment, because I think we'll probably put that to a vote. Like, how would we reword the Second Amendment if we were creating our own constitution? And a lot of it would have to do with, like, should citizens have the right to form a militia to protect themselves against the government, even if they would lose that fight? And what's allowed. So back when the Second Amendment was written, it included things like cannons and whatnot. But back then they didn't have automatic guns. They didn't have nukes. The old thought was that the citizens should be able to have anything the government can have. But now that the government's figured out ways to create nukes, obviously I don't think the citizens should have nukes. Grenades. There's so many things that are tricky. But yeah. But anyways, I'll let you get going. I'll send you a link to the talk I had with Phil on the Second Amendment, because he has a pretty interesting take on that. But yeah, it was good talking, man. And I'll see you around.
For sure.
All right. Take care.
Yep.